homeland of the Métis Nation. The City of Regina owes its strength and vibrancy to these lands and the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory, as well as the settlers from around the world who continue to be welcomed here and call Regina home. Some members of council and city administration may be attending the meeting today through video conferencing, and I'll remind those to ensure your video and microphone are off. And if a member of council wishes to speak, use the raise hand function. When speaking for both administration and council, remember to unmute your microphone and enable your video camera. All votes will be conducted with a recorded vote. Some delegations may be attending the meeting today through teleconferencing. I do have a special announcement. May 15th to 21st is National Public Works Week. The City of Regina recognizes and celebrates public works professionals for their readiness and resilience in service to our community. From roads and bridges to water and traffic, these services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals. The important work contributes to public health, high quality of life, and well-being for the people of Regina. We value and appreciate the contribution of our public works employees. Their work makes our city a better place. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the agenda as submitted? Thank you, Councillor Bresciani, with a second by Councillor Stadnichuk. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Carried. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the meetings of May 4th, 2022, meeting of City Council? Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Can I get a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Findura. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Carried. We will now consider public hearing bylaw 2022-30, the Regina Zoning Amendment Bylaw. And I will turn it over to Deputy Mayor Zakidniak for first reading.
I move, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that bylaw 2022-30 be introduced and read a first time.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Zakidniak. I will ask the clerk to start the vote.
Councillor Moll in favor.
Through you, Mayor Masters, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I will ask the city clerk to speak to the public hearing portion of the bylaw.
Through you, Madam Mayor, as required by legislation, the following bylaw requires a public hearing. Bylaw number 2022-30, Regina Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Bylaw 2022 number 10. The proposed amendment is to provide clarity in regulations, fix errors, and correct zoning designations on maps. Is there anyone in the gallery who wishes to address City Council on this proposed bylaw? There appears to be none, Mayor.
Thank you very much to the clerk. Deputy Mayor Zakidniak, can I ask you to please do a second reading of the bylaw?
I move, seconded by Councillor Shaw, that bylaw 2022-30 be read a second time.
Thank you very much. Do any members of council have any questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to start the vote.
Landon Moll in favor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you to the clerk. Deputy Mayor Zakidniak, can you actually please do consent for third reading of the bylaw?
I move, seconded by Councillor Mancinelli, that council hereby consent to bylaw 2022-30 going to third reading at this meeting.
Thank you very much. Can I have the clerk start the vote?
Counselor Mole in favor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, consent for third reading carries unanimously as required by law.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Zakiniak, can I ask you please do the final reading of the bylaw?
I move, seconded by Counselor Stadnichuk, that bylaw 2022-30 be read a third time.
Thank you very much. Clerk, could you please start the vote?
In favor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the third and final reading of the bylaw carries unanimously.
Thank you to the clerks. We'll now consider item CR 22-55, the Buffalo Pound Plant Renewal Financing. Deputy Mayor Zakiniak, can I ask that you please introduce the report?
Yes, sorry, one quick sec here. Okay, so this was discussed last week at Executive Committee and about the need for to initiate a process to negotiate financing up to a maximum of $55 million. We did discuss this at length at Executive.
Thank you much. Deputy Mayor, can I ask for a seconder, please, for the report? Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Administration, I understand someone would like to speak. Mr. Lacey?
Yes, through you, Mayor Masters, we have with us today Judy May, who's a member of Buffalo Pound's board, who are initiating this request, as well as Mr. Johnson from CEO of the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Corporation. And I believe Ms. May has a couple of opening remarks with respect to the request before council here.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. Ms. May?
Mayor Masters, City Council, thank you for meeting with us again today. I would first like to acknowledge that our facility and operations are located on Treaty 4 lands. I'm Judy May, the Chair of the Finance and Audit Committee of the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Corporation, and with me here today is Mr. Ryan Johnson, President and CEO of the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Corporation. I'll make brief remarks, and at the end of my comments, Mr. Johnson and I certainly are here to respond to any further questions you may have of us. The development of the Plant Renewal Project business case began in 2016. Prior to this time period, the plant had identified a large number of performance and aging infrastructure issues. It became clear to us that in order to provide the cities of Regina and Moose Jaw a reliable and affordable supply of safe, high-quality drinking water which meets the needs and expectations of consumers, we had to address or assess whether we continue to address the various plant issues on a one-off basis by renovating the plant or by building a new plant. The business case was subsequently concluded in 2017. To date, the Plant Renewal Project has involved a number of stages of analysis. Our focus as we have worked through these various stages is to ensure the renewed plant processes are optimized for efficiency, effectiveness, that the plant will be able to address future regulatory capacity, quality, and environmental requirements. And in undertaking the plant renewal, we will be able to do so with cost certainty. Throughout this process, we have engaged third parties such as our owner's engineer, external legal counsel, and various members of both cities' administrations to provide us with input and advice. We have also provided updates on our progress to city councils from time to time. In mid-November of 2021, we received a pre-guaranteed maximum price cost estimate that exceeded our expectations. While we did pursue the availability of additional Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program funding, we ultimately were informed that more funding through this program would not be available to us. From the time we received the pre-guaranteed maximum pricing to March of 2022, our team undertook, along with our joint venture partner, Graham AECon, an additional review in an effort to reduce costs without reducing the project's scope. We did not find any new savings. As permitted by our design engineer or design build agreement with Graham AECon joint venture, we asked that their final submission to us of the guaranteed maximum price proposal for construction costs also include a lump sum pricing proposal. On March the 25th, we received these proposals for construction costs, and they were submitted as follows. The guaranteed maximum price proposal came in at $308.4 million. The lump sum pricing proposal came in at $295 million. The two proposals have been reviewed by our project team and external advisors. They have deemed the lump sum proposal as the most cost-effective and the least risk to both the corporation and the cities. The corporation's board of directors met subsequently on April the 22nd, and we reviewed this matter. And through this thorough review, we have approved the recommendation to proceed with the lump sum cost proposal for the plant renewal project, subject to obtaining the necessary financing or the necessary commitment to the financing by the cities. Therefore, we are here today seeking to secure from the City of Regina a commitment that financing of an additional $55 million will be in place for 2024 in order that we can award the plant renewal project construction services proposal. We require a commitment to financing from both cities before May the 27th. The corporation must reward the lump sum proposal by May the 27th in order to secure the pricing that's available to us at this point in time and to ensure that the construction timeline is maintained. To recap, the $55 million in the funding shortfall is based on the lump sum construction cost proposal of $295 million, less the secured funding that we have in hand to date, which is a total of $240 million. And that is comprised of investing in Canada infrastructure program funding at both the federal and provincial government level at a total of $163.4 million, a TD Bank loan that we were able to secure in December of 2021 at $60 million, and a set of reserves of the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Corporation of $16.6 million that will be applied to this project. Our current cash flow analysis indicates we will not require this funds of $55 million before 2024. However, in discussion with the city's administrations, we believe it would be prudent to secure financing now with interest rates as they are lower, and then do construction progress draws later as funds are required. In consultations with the city's administrations, our view is an interest rate swap loan would be the preferred method of financing, and in fact, both we and the two cities have previous experience with this type of loan. In assessing the impact of this additional funding to the cities of Regina and Moose Jaw, we assumed we are able to finance the $55 million of new debt at 4% interest over 25 years. And given these assumptions, it is our calculation that the corporation will pay $3.5 million a year for principal and interest payments. As we sell approximately 35,000 megaliters of water in a year, our borrowing will result in the corporation setting a water capital rate increase to the two cities of $100 per megaliter. In turn, this translates to the individual residential consumer in both Regina and Moose Jaw as a one-time increase of 10 cents per meter cubed. In Regina, this 10 cents per meter cubed increase results in a 4.5% increase to the residential water consumption rate. In the city of Moose Jaw, this cost increase translates into a 6.8% increase to the individual consumption rate. Should the corporation receive both cities' commitment to the financing of the $55 million, we will continue to work with the city's administrations on securing the financing arrangements. The corporation will then come back before City Council with the actual loan details for formal borrowing and guarantee bylaws in the near future. As this concludes my formal comments, Mr. Johnson and I would be happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. May. Members of council, I believe administration's intent is to treat Mr. Johnson and Ms. May as members of administration. So I'll open up the floor to question once I have someone move the, I got a mover and a seconder, right? This is what happens when we get out of sync here. All right. Go ahead, Councilor Mancinelli.
Thank you very much for the information. Through the chair, my first question is the discrepancy between Moose Jaw water rates and Regina's water rates per liter. Why the difference between the two?
To Councillor, I'm going to defer this question to Mr. Ryan for an answer. Or Mr. Johnson, sorry.
Thank you, through Mayor Masters. The City of Moose Jaw's rate is about $1.46 per cubic meter, where City of Regina's is about $2.21. It's based on the other costs for delivering water. City administration might be better able to answer the details, but typically it's just the what the City of Moose Jaw charges for to cover its cost for its reservoirs, its pipes, water main replacement programs, things like that.
I think that summarizes as well. Thank you very much for the answer. Second question is, one of the items that expand the costs are the orthophosphate system. It's lumped in with the solar panel addition. I'm just wondering how those two break apart.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Masters, to the Councillor, Ryan Johnson will answer that question.
Thank you, through Mayor Masters. The orthophosphate we're thinking is about $4.25 million, so it's about half that. And it's the only two change orders we're anticipating for the project that would relate to the two cities. So that we just lumped them together, but we're thinking it's 50-50.
Orthophosphate, of course, is added for lead pipes. Just thinking of the extra investment we've made to correct that situation in a timely fashion, would it throw this project at risk to start to consider turning that decision around for the orthophosphate investment, or is it too late in the game to even discuss that? Through the chair.
Thank you, through Mayor Masters. So the City of Regina's, again, I'm treading on City of Regina's territory, but if the City of Regina is replacing the lead lines as part of its project, that deals with the lead service connections from the main to, I believe, right to the inside the home of the homeowner, I believe is how it's being set up. Adding orthophosphate will deal with the brass inside the house, lead solder connections, other things. So it basically will coat the system, right, water mains included, all the way through to the tap. So, there are times where people will buy what they feel or is quoted as lead-free brass materials, which aren't necessarily so. So this would give protection by coating the entire system. So it's not wasted effort. It would just be enhanced protection. And that would happen by 2025. That would be in operation. And I believe the city went to a 15-year replacement program. So this will catch up ahead of that program, but also protect the system completely so that people don't have to replace their copper piping within the household as well.
Councilor Mancinelli, I'm just going to check in with Mr. Kim Onright. Mr. Onright, do you have anything to add?
Thanks. Through the chair, we have Mr. Doney online, so I'll just ask him if he has anything further to add.
Through you, Mayor Masters. What Mr. Johnson has explained is completely accurate, and I don't have anything to add at this time.
Thank you. Councilor Mancinelli?
Thanks. Called my concern about the investment. Appreciate the information.
Thanks very much, Councilor Mancinelli. Councilor Bresciani?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for presenting today. Just in regards to you indicated it's going to be a one-time increase per 10 cents per meter cube. That works out to a 4.5% increase to the water consumption rate. What one-time increase, so when would that be? So just so if residents have to, if there is increase, how would that work through the chair?
Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So the water consumption rate is just one aspect of the overall utility bill our water consumers receive. So there's the water consumption itself, but as well, there's other costs that the water utility here in Regina charges for the operating costs of the utility as well as replacement of the pipes and the aging infrastructure. So we estimate that overall the utility rate will increase by approximately 2%. Now, as Buffalo Pound has noted here, they won't be making likely draws on the loan until 2024. So we have the opportunity to determine how we'll implement that 2% increase. Do we do it in a lump sum? Do we phase it in over a couple of years? And I think this upcoming 23-24 budget, when we bring forward the 2023-2024 budget, will be the opportune time to make recommendations to council on how best to implement that increase.
Great, that's very important. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Stevens.
Just one question for administration. Completely support the project. Why would we increase the utility rate and not draw from the utility reserve? Can you explain what the cost or benefit might be and why we're choosing this approach versus established reserves?
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for the question through you, Mayor Masters. So the utility reserve is the primary and the only really funding source other than, is the primary funding source for renewal of our water infrastructure. So some of our infrastructure is 50, 100 years old, does require replacement. We have a couple of very large projects on the books. For example, the Eastern Water Pressure project that we have that will occur here over the next couple of years. So we expect that that reserve, while it's quite high today, in 5 years' time will be significantly drawn down. So if instead of you increasing the utility rates, which is always an option to council, but what that would mean is it would mean then that some of the needed infrastructure projects would not proceed in the timely fashion that we believe they should, or at a future point in time we'd have to borrow for those infrastructure projects.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Last call. Oh, Councillor Mole, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious, with this guaranteed maximum price proposal, I'm wondering what percentage of the construction project is engineered?
Thank you, Mayor Masters, to the councillor. I'm not sure if I understand the question. Are you talking about like the design is basically now 100% complete? So we have a full design package. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, thank you very much for the answer. That's exactly what I'm asking. So if approved today, when will the construction take place?
Through Mayor Masters, construction could commence. I would expect mobilization for first week of June.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mole. Councillor Skabnichuk.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Through the chair, this question was asked to executive, but I think there may be other people listening that might want to hear this. Can you explain when was the last time the water utility, the water plant, Buffalo Pound water plant was upgraded, and sort of what the need, especially with climate change coming, what the need is now and what we're trying to address?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. The last time there were major upgrades to the water treatment plant or water utility plant were in the late 1980s. And so we are definitely reaching the end of the useful life of most of our equipment and processes that support our processes. There are a number of things that we need to do looking forward that are in our plan, and I'm going to turn it now to Mr. Johnson for further description of what we're contemplating in this project.
Thank you, through Mayor Masters. So the project itself is dealing things with aging infrastructure. We have regulatory compliance issues where the plant is unable to treat the effluent from our processed waste to a standard, where most water treatment plants are built within cities. they send their effluents to a wastewater treatment plant, which does it, but we have to do that ourselves. We have issues with, we only have very limited ability to treat water. We only have a few processes that we can use. In the new plant, we'll have the ability to fine tune and be very efficient and effective in how we treat, so we can minimize chemical usage and treat water to with more precision than we do currently. Today, we put a lot of factor safety in what we do to ensure that we have water that will be compliant. We have, with climate change, we've been finding that the raw water conditions of the lake have been changing from year to year. That has impacts on how we use chemical and how we treat it. But we also had some major production issues. So back in 2015 was the most significant, where the plant was unable to keep up to the city's water demand for a period of about 9 to 11 days, and at periods we were down to 25% capacity. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't work when we're having these conversations with cities that we may not be able to meet their demands, and the cities were looking at plans on how to reduce water usage and even potential for depressurization. So we're going to be addressing a lot of that, modernizing. We don't have a lot of redundancy, so when a process goes down, we don't have a backup system for it. So this will add a level of redundancy. So if a process goes down, we have a way to continue running the plant. The plant is being expanded in its capacity to meet the city's projected use, and this is the city's Regina, Moose Jaw, and the region, to the year 2050. So we should be able to meet future demands on the plant till the year 2050, where the next renewal should be planned to take place. So those are some of the major elements of the renewal project. Also, the enhanced environmental initiatives. So the new administration building will contain the lab, and the workshop will be built to a LEED standard. We will have solar power as part of our project that will offset some of our carbon footprint. And there will be, again, we also have other things we'll be doing in conjunction with that that's outside the project but related, to try to get us down to completely 100% green power by the year 2028. So those are things that are being factored into it. And again, there'll be new pumps, new energy efficient equipment we put in. Life cycle cost analysis was taken into consideration, so all of our assets will have a decent life cycle cost as part of the decision making process of what was being put in, what was not being put in, to ensure that we're running the most efficient facility we can.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Stanichuk. I see no further questions from council. Administration, Mr. Lacey, did you have anything further to add? All right. Deputy Mayor, would you like to close off debate?
No, thank you.
Thanks very much. City Clerk, I'd ask that you call the vote, please.
Councillor Moule in favor.
Through you, Mayor Masters, the motion carries unanimously.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson and Ms. May, for presenting today. I'm going to turn my mic on. I'd like to call upon delegation Alan Mignot, representing Regina Queen City Kinsmen Club. Good afternoon, sir. I'll ask that you please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you happen to live. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to answer any questions they may have for you. Good afternoon.
Afternoon. My name's Alan Minot. I'm representing the Queen City Kinsmen Club from here in Regina. I don't specifically have a presentation. I just wanted to make sure I was available for any further discussion concerning our lease that was discussed at the executive meeting.
Thank you very much. I seem to have a question from council. Councillor Zakidniak, go ahead of the delegation.
Hi there. With the redrawing of the boundaries, this is now in my ward, Ward 8. And so I just wanted to check in. So if this is approved, my understanding is the facility is not currently open. So how quickly, do you know how quickly you'd be able to open it up and offer the different services detailed in the report?
Our plan is we should be fairly quickly into June. We do have some work that we needed to do that we didn't want to proceed until this was finalized. But our plan is by mid-June at the latest.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kidnack. I see no other questions of council for you, sir. You can, thanks for
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for attending this afternoon, and please return to the gallery. We'll now consider item CR 22-57, Coronation Park Community Garden. Deputy Mayor Zakidniak, can I ask that you please introduce the report? Pardon me, one moment, please. Apologies, that's why they get paid the big bucks. We'll consider item CR 22-56, Kinhouse lease. I apologize for Rambler Park. Deputy Mayor Zakidniak, could you please introduce that report?
Thank you. This at Executive Committee last week, we considered this report for a lease of a portion of city-owned property at Rambler Park to the Kinsmen in exchange for some concessions and vending that they would be offering at events. And executive, we had a bit of a discussion about it, and Executive Committee seeks concurrence. Do I need to get a seconder or?
Or I'll ask for one.
Okay.
Councillor Hawkins would like to second your report. Do you have any further comment?
No.
You good? Open up to the floor of council. Seeing nothing, Deputy Mayor, do you have anything to add for close?
I don't, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the clerk to call the vote.
This is Councillor Mole in favor.
Through you, Mayor Masters, the motion carries unanimously with all members voting in favor.
Thank you very much to the clerks. I'd like to call upon Delegate Daryl Ryan, representing Coronation Park Community Association. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to answer any questions they may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please proceed, sir.
Madam Mayor, councillors, staff, and guests, my name is Daryl Rainey. I live in Regina, and I'm the chairperson of the Coronation Park Community Association. It is with pleasure to speak to you about our proposed community garden. My hope is that the information that I sent in last week was received and read by you. The board took on this project because of what we've experienced over the last few years in the area, and also wanted to enhance the lives of people living in Coronation Park, especially those who live in apartments, townhouses, and those with small yards. As some of you may remember, that there is a plan to change the Regent Park Par 3, which is in Coronation Park, to a community space. As the board started to discuss a community garden, we started to look for a space in which this could happen. It was suggested by the city that the Par 3 was a possible space to use. So we agreed, and the City Parks and Rec started the plans. The proposed garden space is in an area that has a high density of apartments and low-income housing units. These folks do not have the opportunity to grow any of their own fresh food. You will also know that the cost of fresh food is skyrocketing. It is in our view that a major number of gardens will be for people in these housing units first before others. This space will also have several raised beds for people that need accessibility to enable them to garden. My hope is that the diversity of people living in Coronation Park, that neighbor will get to know neighbor, relationships will grow and flourish, and Coronation Park become a community that is less afraid of each other and more helping and caring for one another. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. I'll open it up to the floor of council. I have questions from Councillor Shaw.
Hi, Daryl. Thank you for your presentation. I'm excited to hear about this. I know when I was elected, that was kind of my first goal, was to have community gardens in each of my areas. And thank you for taking the initiative to get this going. I have a question as to the funding, the help that you would need in order to get this off the ground. And is it possible to get it off the ground this year through the chair?
So through the chair, yes, funding is actually in place because Coronation Park wasn't able to spend a lot of its grant money due to COVID. We weren't able to offer programs. We have money from that, and as well as our new program person has been applying for grants. And so I'm not exactly sure about the dollar amount right now for grants because they just keep coming in, but I think we're somewhere around close to $30,000. The total cost of the project is around $75,000.
Okay, so I just want to offer an extension to let me know if there's any help that I can do for you. And also, the next question is, you talked about the accessible gardens with the raised beds. Do you have, and just wondering, have you actually had an ask of this so far in talking to the community and getting any engagement from the community through the chair?
No, we didn't engage with the community about that, but we know that in every community there's accessibility problems. Yeah. And so this is one of the features we wanted to address right at the get-go. And with the city planning group is what we decided to do, is put them in. And if people with accessibility issues aren't able or don't apply for them, or we have some left over, then others will be able to use them that year.
And that's kind of where I was going. I was just wondering if there's anything specific, and I thank you for engaging in that and ensuring that everybody is welcome. Once again, thank you for this project. Thank you for taking the initiative, and thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Mr. Ryan, I have a question from Councillor Stadenchuk for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Through the chair, thanks for this project and for being committed to food security. My question is regarding skill set of people who may want to garden, but maybe they don't have the background in terms of how to plant, how to care for plants. Maybe they don't have the tools. Have there been any considerations of having common tools that would be available at the shed, any education program that would help support people to do gardening?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we've talked about that. One of the things we've talked about is having tools available to participants in the sheds. The other part we're talking about, and we haven't got that far along because we're waiting for approval, right, but we talked about starting sort of a garden club, which would hopefully help people that have never grown a garden before to have some expertise come in and talk with folks about that.
Well, that's excellent. Thanks. And my second question through the chair is just, I noticed on the plan that there are some deciduous trees, coniferous trees in the area. Were there any considerations, and this might be something for the future, but fruit trees as well? I noticed that at the community garden that's closest to my place is the Queen Street Community Garden in Lakeview, and they have an orchard and raspberry bushes that is available for people who have a garden plot as well. Is that something that, if you need raspberry bushes, I've got some I can donate.
Well, thank you. We did look at fruit trees at the beginning concept of the plan, but felt that as a gardener myself, too many trees block the sun from your garden. It's hard to grow. So what we've talked, I believe, I haven't seen the final plan yet, but what we are looking at is low-bearing fruit trees. So it could be raspberries, could be blueberries, pin cherries, whatever that might be. And then that would just be open to whoever in the community that wants to pick them.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stadenchuk. Sir, I see no further questions from council, so I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you.
We'll now consider item CR 22-57, Coronation Park Community Garden. Deputy Mayor Zakiniak, can I ask that you please introduce the report?
Thank you. This report recommends the City of Regina entering into an agreement for the lease of the city-owned property at the former Regent 3 PAR course to the Coronation Park Community Association, and also recommends a property tax exemption for the property. There was a very positive discussion at Executive Committee, was very positive, lots of support for this project, and Executive Committee seeks concurrence. Oh, and I guess I can go ahead and get a seconder. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Any members of council wishing to speak? Seeing none. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to close off debate?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Clerk, could you please call the vote?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries 10-0. Councillor Moll has left the meeting.
Thank you very much to the clerks. We'll consider item PB Impressions and Thread Lease for 950 Arcola Avenue. Deputy Mayor Zakiniak, can I ask that you please introduce the report?
Thank you. This report recommends the city entering into an agreement for the lease of the city-owned property at 950 Arcola Avenue. And there wasn't much discussion at Executive Committee, partially because Impressions and PB Impressions and Thread has leased this property since 2013, and the lease has expired, and so this is just recommending a new lease for this property. Executive Committee seeks concurrence.
Thanks. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Mancinelli. I'll ask if any members of council have any questions. Seeing none, Deputy Mayor, did you wish to close off?
No, thank you.
Thanks very much. City Clerk, could you please call the vote?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries unanimously.
Thanks very much, the clerk. Next up, we will be speaking to CM 22-14, for which we have a couple delegates. I would like to call upon Jackie Schmidt, representing Heritage Regina. Good afternoon. I'm going to ask that you please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing and where you happen to reside. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to answer any questions they may have for you. Please proceed. Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Jackie Schmidt. I'm with Heritage Regina and I reside in Regina. Madam Mayor and members of City Council. I know you have read all the materials in Harvard several times, all my materials in Harvard several times. The issue we have here today is, what do we do next? We have a developer buying buildings with the intent from the beginning to tear them down. And we've had administrations in the past that haven't enforced their own policy. We do have policy to enforce preservation, and we've had these policies for some time, and we've now have another policy that guides us in adaptive reuse. There's no evidence other than what Harvard has provided that the facade has to come down, or that taking it down and putting it back up in the future is the appropriate way to preserve heritage buildings. My submitted report before you today contains information from 2 leading experts in the area of conservation. Donald Luxton's quote to me was, "Why take it down? It's not necessary." It is also less likely to ever be reconstructed properly, and it is not recommended conservation approach. We would like to know what the basis of the city's recommendations to the board are, were there engineers that were involved in this option number 3? We have no evidence of like where they came to that conclusion for. We have no evidence that the proposed caveat by Harvard as whether it's going to be successful in preserving a heritage site and what the legal ramifications are going forward into the future. We don't see it as a viable solution at this time. It also seems likely we're weighing in on a sleek presentation of a pocket park rather than deciding upon the issue of forest, which is a heritage building and in a conservation district. Our recommendation is that we can't support the motion put forth by the city. We think there needs to be more discussions of options with a third party weighing in on the feasibility of the facade preservation, and that the policy put forth by the administration ensures that all parties are accountable now and into the future. I've been in conversation with Ms. Hill this morning and on a number of other occasions. We are trying to get to a place that we feel will be acceptable, and we don't believe the option number 3 right now is the right way to go. And we ask that you give us more time to like look at how we can make this work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will open it up to council for questions. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming forward. So you said that more time is needed and more discussions are needed. Jackie, what do you see that looking like then? Through the chair.
See that Roseanne and I need more time to decide how this like plays forward, goes forward, and how we work out the details of how this facade is saved, that we need a third party that weighs in on this, that right now we just have the word of Harvard, which is paying the engineer's report. We need someone else that's a third party to tell us this is best practices, and how does this go forward? Do we save this facade in place, which is what Heritage Regina would like to see happen? Or is taking it down the proper way to preserve it? And how long is the optimum time that we have if we do take it down brick by brick? And if we do take it down, we need to make sure that Heritage Regina needs to feel comfortable with all the different aspects of that facade. There are iron plates, there are tin parts on the top of that building that need to be preserved. The first floor has had restoration, or not restoration, but remodeling done. That's not necessarily, depends on who you talk to. If you talk to Donald Luxton and some other people, they are in love with that first floor facade. I do not believe Harvard appreciates that. I'm like on the fence about that. But we need to know how we're going to preserve that facade, and we need to have a third party weigh in on that to make sure that we're using the right approach going forward. And that I don't feel there's enough discussion about that in this report, that it seems like we're discussing a pocket park that's got all these really nice things about it. That's really not what we're here for. It's great that we're engaging the site, but we don't know how long the site is going to be needed to be engaged, and what we do with it in the meantime.
Thank you. Just the last question, you talk about a third party, someone that would be independent, obviously. Would it be someone that you would be a recommendation from Regina or outside? What's your thoughts on that through the chair?
I think that it would probably be possible that we come to an agreement on who that third party person would be, whether it be a person that's been hired before by the city of Regina, which is Donald Luxton, or somebody else who has expertise in conservation of heritage buildings, and not just an engineer who's done it before, but someone has expertise in that area.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, through the chair. Just want to make sure I understand where there is agreement. My understanding is that both you as well as Harvard are satisfied with maintaining the facade, but building new and incorporating it into a new structure. Is that correct?
I didn't hear the last part of that.
Incorporating it into a new structure.
Correct.
Okay.
But that we also have to weigh in on what that new construction looks like. As we've gone through this process, the schematics for that building have changed, and I would say they have changed for the better. And Heritage Regina is hopeful that we continue to have that kind of change and that approach to respectful new construction around a heritage building.
Okay. And through the chair, it's correct to say that your preference is for the facade to be shored up until such time as we can agree on what the future building might look like. Is that correct?
Correct. We would preserving it, bracing it in place, and the pocket park can still exist behind that braced facade with all the elements that Harvard proposes in their presentation, but that we preserve the facade in place.
Okay. I'll ask this of administration as well, but my understanding is if it were shored, that it would essentially be a construction site that might not be inviting to actual pedestrian and temporary use. What are your thoughts about that?
I think there's a lot of large cities around North America who have shored up their buildings, and they're actually engaging sites. You can go to the end of the Brooklyn Bridge in New York and see a warehouse building that's completely four walls, and it's a park and a garden inside, and that shored building is part of the actual site, and people go to it for just that reason.
Okay, thank you. Last question. You need more time. This has been months in the making. There have been depositions at a provincial body that adjudicated. I would say that that's enough time. How much more time do you need?
That's up to Harvard and Heritage Regina and to the city administration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Stadnicek.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Through the chair, I do have a question regarding the Saskatchewan Heritage Foundation Review Board. I understand that you attended the hearing and participated.
That is correct.
So my question through the chair is, I was kind of curious about their response, and I want to know if you have an interpretation of it. They seem to agree that the facade needs to be preserved, but they did not weigh in on what method is preferable in their view. Do you have any sense of why that decision was taken? And I might ask administration the same question too.
I would say there is not that kind of expertise on that provincial review board. You have a family lawyer, and I'm not an architect who's not a conservation architect, and I'm not sure what the third person is, but I don't think they have expertise to make that recommendation.
Okay, through the chair, again, I think my last question is in the Saskatchewan Heritage Foundation Review Board report. They also make reference, and the administration makes reference to heritage easement and covenant agreement. So can you comment on how you understand that and if that is a way to move forward?
I'm really not sure what they're talking about.
Okay, then I will ask others on that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnicek. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mayor, through the chair. Jackie, in your report, you list a number of concerns with the plan to deconstruct, store, and reconstruct the wall. Can you indicate to us, give us some detail on what concerns you have with that plan?
So through the chair, when taking down a building, it needs to be stored properly. The bricks need to be stacked properly. In taking it down, according to the people we spoke to, they are going to be losing 20 to 30% of those bricks. Those bricks were probably made in the US and they are not available anymore. And so it's going to be obvious that when it gets put back, it will never look the same. And those bricks will never be replaced, that you won't be able to see them. So we'll lose part of that. If the bricks have to be moved, they can be destroyed. Just the fact that they are taken down and stacked into piles and they're not stacked properly by a heritage conservation person who is actually on site as they get taken down. And during the deconstruction process, if it's not a trained heritage person taking this building down, there are things that are also destroyed that cannot be reused. And once it's gone, it's gone.
Through you, Madam Chair, do you know, one method discussed here is the reconstruction, storage deconstruction method. We know that that method has been used in some cities for some projects. We also know that the bracing of the facade has been used. Do you know of any project where the gap between the deconstruction and the reconstruction was 5 or 10 or 15 years in length?
Through the chair, starting from your beginning question, which is about both processes. I've seen both processes work well, but I've also seen when a building has been taken down brick by brick that has been rebuilt within the construction process. And I've never known of a process where it's been deconstructed and a period of this many years has gone by. In having this conversation with the report that you have before you, I was told the optimum length of time to let things sit is like less than a year.
Thank you for that answer. Through you, Madam Chair, one further question. Under the Heritage Preservation Act, demolition is not permitted unless a final redevelopment plan has been presented. In this case, it appears there's no final redevelopment plan, but just an interim redevelopment plan. Does that cause you any concern, or do you have any comment on that?
Through the chair, that causes me great concern because we have a history right now of, in past administrations, of not enforcing policy and not inspecting buildings. And now we're asking administration to do something that they don't even have a policy written for. That makes me really worried.
What's the nature of the worry?
That we haven't been enforcing policies up until this point, and now we're gonna go out free form and like not even have a policy. Like who regulates the storage of this brick and who checks up on it and the architectural detail besides just the brick? There are iron plates in there and the tin cornice at the top. Like who checks up on that? And where's the policy written? Because my experience in this room with all these documents in the past is that we write these great documents with best practices, but then they don't get enforced. And who's going to enforce this? And we don't have these people in place right now in administration. So who's going to do that? That's my worry.
Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Mancinelli.
Hi, through the chair, just reading through the report from Brixton, knowing they have a background in masonry, the second last paragraph details the west wall and the condition of it. Its likelihood for another building to be able to be reattached to it, as well as the masonry joints in it being of poor condition. It gives me positive concern for maintaining the structure as it stands. How does that read out to you? What do you take from information there? Is it trusted information for you, or do you doubt it? What do you take from that information?
Through the chair, you're asking me if the structure is like...
Yeah, reading through the masonry report from Brixton, on the second last paragraph, they talk about the option of the west facade to remain. They describe the condition of that wall itself and the likelihood of being able to build off it, as well as how it currently stands, and the lack of anything but two small columns for not being a good candidate. I'm just wondering, I've never built anything like this, restored it or made it stand. It gives me great pause. How do you read into that when that information is presented to you? How does that play out to you?
Through the chair, when the reconstruction of the College Avenue campus happened, there were parts of that building that were so weak that they didn't have to use a crane or any kind of equipment. They could almost push it with their hand and it crumbled down before them. But yet the front facade of that one building, the dormitory building wall, was braced and reinforced, and they built their structure on that building. So I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. One moment. Thanks. Thanks for the presentation, Jackie. Ms. Schmidt, following along the lines of Councillor Stevens' questions with regard to what's in agreement is that the property has some heritage value, it's in the Heritage Conservation District, and the facade should be saved. How common, following up on Councillor Hawkins, how common is it across the country to deconstruct brick and put it back together in terms of, it's a practice that is done regularly or no?
Yes. Yes.
And you don't recommend that in this case because?
Because people like Donald Luxon have said to me that when something like this gets torn down, that it's usually never put back up.
And his examples of that are
His
what?
experience through Alberta, the Yukon, Saskatchewan, as a conservation expert, hired by the city of Regina, actually.
But there are examples across the country where, in fact, this has happened. It's taken down and put back up.
And I agree, yes, and it has been successful.
So where's the guarantee that if an engineer's report about the mortar being weak, if it is braced in place, that I think your language was 20 years from now development happens, that it doesn't fall apart then when it goes to be attached to the building that's going up behind it?
And the question is?
The question is, if the mortar is weak and it's old, 20 years from now, if your estimation of when the development goes ahead, 20 years from now, it's braced in place, is it the potential that when it goes to be attached to the next building and behind it, that it could fall apart at that point in time?
The mortar is replaced when it's restored, and then the building has got another 100 years of service life, and with the building that is attached to it is attached to, and I'm not an engineer, but the bracing that was used to secure that wall in place to begin with.
So at the time of bracing, all of the mortar is then reconstituted?
I would think so, yes.
Okay, so it's not just a bracing in place, but it's actual the repair of the entire wall at
Correct.
present that you're arguing for. Okay, and in terms of, it is a heritage conservation district. Clearly, it's identified as a heritage area. We agree it's a heritage building. What about the elements of the property itself, the building itself, have the heritage elements in them, aside from the height and the brick used?
The facade and its place within the Heritage Conservation District.
So it is just, so the facade itself, as long as it goes back, if it were taken down, as long as it goes back up, that protects the conservation district because of what's seen from street level, is that correct?
As long as it is my understanding, as long as it goes back in the same place that it was taken down from.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. I see no further questions from council, so I thank you again very much for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you step back into the gallery.
Thank you.
I'd like to call upon delegation Roseanne Hill Blaisdell and Terry Klein, representing Harvard Diversified Enterprises. I'll ask you to please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing for the record, and where you happen to live. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to answer any questions that we may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Roseanne Hill Blaisdell, President and CEO of Harvard Developments, and I reside here in Regina. With me is Terry Klein, our Director of Property Management of Harvard Developments. So, to begin, our application, we've been on a long journey here. Our application first came in July of 2021, subsequent to an engineering report that we received. Through the process, we have worked very collaboratively with all the stakeholders and received some very, very valuable input from councillors, from administration, from experts, Provincial Heritage Review Board, the public, and certainly other stakeholders, including Regina Downtown and the Métis Nation groups that have an interest in this site as well. Our redevelopment plan in the interim is one that we feel addresses all the needs of this site and preserving this building. It is true that that we are on the same page with Heritage Regina as it relates to preserving the facade of this building and preserving it in its place. And therefore, we are recommending that occur and that it also be sanctified in terms of registration on the title and being a requirement for redevelopment moving forward. During this process, we took a lot of time and care to review all the alternatives. And in doing so, we brought in experts, and those experts would include a structural engineer from a local engineering firm, J.C. Kenyon, and the individual who we engaged was Mr. Brad Taylor. Brad Taylor is an active member of the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals, a member of the Association of Preservation Technology International, previously served on the board of the Saskatchewan Heritage Foundation, and worked on most significant heritage buildings in Regina, including the Legislative Building, the Globe Theatre, Connaught Library, the Leader Building, College Avenue Campus, and Dark Hall. For these reasons, we put great trust in his recommendations and his advice. We also used Brixton Masonry as our masonry vendor, the report of which has been highlighted today. Brixton Masonry has completed restorative services to the College Avenue Campus, Dark Hall, and the Leader Building, and has also completed major restorative scopes to work in other buildings in downtown Regina. For those reasons, we trusted their advice about the condition of the mortar and their recommendation that we move forward to deconstruct and therefore reconstruct afterwards, and that the longevity and integrity of that facade would be better preserved with pursuing that option. We also have used PCL in our process. PCL is a trusted contractor in the city of Regina, and they were engaged several years ago in a huge restorative project called the Cadillac Fairview Rideau Centre in Ottawa. That particular project is much larger than this one, but certainly faced all of the same challenges. And in that particular case, Ogilvy's was the department store that formed part of the facade. The necessary bricks, windows, and other decorative pieces were stored off-site until they could be reincorporated into the new build. And PCL oversaw that whole process and has good experience and guidance. Those bricks were stored for a period of 3 years, and the project received numerous accolades and awards upon completion. Since filing our application, we have engaged the community. We have the support of Regina Downtown Business Improvement District, and the Métis community and Heritage Regina, the Regina Farmers Market, and the city administration. In closing, I would like to recommend that the option before you, while it's not without its challenges, Harvard is committed to continuing to work with key consultants and vendors who are well-versed in heritage property to ensure that the facade of the Burns-Hanley building is carefully removed and appropriately stored and reconstructed. This is the right approach, we feel, because it allows us to respect and honor the heritage that's there in an interim way, and also contribute to the community by providing a inviting, safe, activated, programmable space for the public to enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. A moment, please. I will open the floor up to questions from Councillor. Councillor Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Mayor Masters, through the chair. So I have a couple questions. I'm glad you answered the question about how long the bricks were stored for the Ogilvy building, because that was going to be one of my questions. So in your report, you talk about a 5-year period and then a review. Can you explain a little bit more about what the purpose of the review would be?
Through the chair. One of our discussion points has been clearly about how long does this interim redevelopment situation occur. Clearly, these circumstances are, generally redevelopment is generally dictated by market demand and opportunity. And since there was a concern about the time frame, we offered, as a gesture of good faith and goodwill, that this circumstance would be reviewed in 5 years for the comfort of Heritage Regina, and to make sure that all of the commitments that were originally made 5 years before, if it is even 5 years, which I don't think it will be, that those are continuing to be maintained. So that was the point.
Okay. Through the chair, I'm not sure if I caught what you said. You said if it is 5 years. So could you explain what you meant by that, through the chair?
Through the chair. We believe that there are a number of very key initiatives on the cusp of the city of Regina that are going to really revitalize our downtown, and we believe that we can play an important role in part of that revitalization, and that will be imminent, not a long time away. We are starting to see new activity in the downtown, but our downtown is still in a very dire circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You might be able to respond to this question, and again, through the chair. Can you explain about the Heritage Easement and Covenant Agreement? Is that part of that 5-year plan, or is that something totally different? be asking administration, but I just
Okay,
wanted to hear your perspective on it.
Through the chair. So the easement agreement is another item that we came to agreement with Heritage Regina on, whereby it's actually a requirement registered on title for the developer and any future developer to reconstruct in a very specific way the facade of the Burns Hanley building as a condition of any future development permit being awarded to the developer for new construction. So it's not really part of the 5-year condition. Yeah.
Okay.
But absolutely requires those steps to take place in order for anything other to happen on the site.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for presenting. Question, when I, going through this for quite a bit, my concerns are with safety. So I see there's professionals for bracing and all the other stuff. I can't seem to wrap my head around that. How would the facade look as it is left standing face of Cornwall Street? So we're talking about a mortar is weak, all the other aspects of it. Is there any concerns in your view as a company for safety? Anything could happen?
Through the chair, absolutely. Our consultants have indicated, as was referenced before, that mortar is weak, and in order for it to be reconstituted, it needs to be dismantled. So the mortar does not get replaced. It's brick on brick. It doesn't get replaced in the bracing process per se. There is, and I'm not an engineer either, but there is there's a process that supports the back of it, but the in-between mortar is still very diminished and in weak condition, and there is a high risk of it not continuing to be a safe circumstance. So we are very concerned about that, and our number one priority would be that in the newly developed integrated condition with the facade, that all of that mortar is replaced and that we can be confident that the integrity of that facade will stand the test of time.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Masters, the comments are made that you might not have the professionals, experts to take this down, which I'm hearing from you do, to take it down and then to store it. The storage of it, is that going to be, on your point, indoor or outdoor storage if you do take it down?
Through the chair, the specific location of the storage has not yet been determined. However, we will be relying very heavily on the professional advice of Brixton, our structural engineers, and also our contractors to make sure that that those bricks are in a location that they are well marked, brick by brick, and that they are well preserved.
Okay, and then one more question, Mayor Masters, and I'll stop. Comments again. I'll just refer to the delegation saying that we as a city will not have the access to monitor or keep the you as a developer to your promise. What do you say to that?
Through the chair, could you
just to say that if you take it down, what city would have a chance to inspect or visit or see where it is and how things progressing when you, because this is a quite a unique brick or building. I was told is you can't get that anymore. Would the city have an opportunity to work with you to, if they ask for access, to see where it is, what's happening? Is that possible?
Through the chair, absolutely. We've been actually really pleased at the collaborative approach of the city in working through a difficult situation with us, and we would welcome the opportunity to continue that collaborative approach.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fundura. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, through the chair. Part of your tentative redevelopment plan includes temporary use. It's in the report. Is it also your commitment to finance the maintenance and upkeep of that space once it's been developed?
Through the chair, so we have outlined, I guess, a pocket park for all intents and purposes, and it is our intent that we would develop that circumstance, and that we would be responsible for the maintenance of that area. The area would be, and we've worked with RD Bid on this already, the area would be programmable through community groups that wish to use the space for a variety of different activities. It could be yoga classes on a sunny afternoon, or comedy shows or the likes that are more conducive to a smaller enclave as opposed to a large open area. So, you know, we have always, as a company, been involved in everything that goes on in the downtown. We're sponsors of festivals and all kinds of other activities, and we would continue to be involved in this as well.
Thank you. Through the chair, what kind of time commitment or time frame are you willing to offer from if this gets approved, you're deconstructing brick by brick the facade, you're maintaining it, and then you're developing a small pocket park? What's the time frame feasibly between now and next year at the latest? Is that correct?
Through the chair, our intent would be to commence immediate deconstruction of this building because it currently does pose a safety threat. And so we would move expeditiously within 30 days. Yes, within 30 days to get moving on this. I am unsure, depending on the weather, about what progress we could make in reconstructing the pocket park, but I suspect we may have to do that next spring when the weather improves, and our intent would be that space would be active and usable by next summer.
Okay, thank you. Last question. Ms. Schmidt has suggested we need more time and that a third-party assessment should be commissioned, and whoever conducts it should be agreed to by both parties here. What's your response to that?
Through the chair, I don't believe that we need more time to make this decision today. We've spent many hours and worked with many groups and had many people weigh in on this matter. What I do feel we can work together on, irrespective of this decision today, is that we could engage another party to work with Harvard and Jackie at Heritage Regina to ensure that whatever is registered on title meets the needs of Heritage Regina, and ensure that there's enough teeth and detail in how to craft that language, so that we have comfort along with Heritage Regina that the future condition will be what we all anticipated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Ms. Hill Blaisdell, what's striking so far in listening to this conversation is that you've mentioned several experts, Brad Taylor, PCL. Ms. Schmidt mentioned an expert, Mr. Luxton. None of these people are here today, I don't think, are they?
Through the chair, no.
And we're not experts. So would you agree with me that that poses a problem for us?
Through the chair, our experts have provided their information in writing in detail for you to read, and their stamp is on their comments. While they're not here today, they're staking their entire reputation on their letterhead, making these comments that are informing a recommendation and informing our chosen direction. I believe that Mr. Luxton has provided in a conversation some commentary to Heritage Regina. He also is an expert, of course, but I did not see anything particular in writing from Mr. Luxton in this report or in Heritage Regina's report. I recognize that this is a challenging circumstance for city councillors to have to grapple with. And I think while none of us are specific engineering experts, we have been through a thorough process here. And I think at some point in time, we need to make a decision and move forward based on the information we have and based on our intuition of what is the right thing to do, and given the imminent circumstance of the safety of this building, which is unsafe.
I'm nervous about intuition. As part of your submission, you submitted the report from Brixton. I haven't seen, or has there been a submission of the other two expert reports, which would be helpful to me, as part of your submission?
Through the chair, the engineering reports from JCK were included in the original submission to council back in 2021.
Oh, really? And they weren't submitted to us this time. Leave that aside for a moment. A 5-year review. The wall, the facade is deconstructed. It's put in storage. Just imagine that the storage is not adequate, that some of the bricks fail, the bricks are old. What is a 5-year review going to do to help us maintain the facade?
Through the chair, the 5-year review perhaps speaks to some of the comments that Councillor Fundura made about providing a mechanism that allows council to regularly be part of the ongoing preservation process. So 5 years, it could be 4 years, but it's a checkpoint, not unlike the downtown office policy, where there's a review to determine what are the current circumstances, have things changed in the downtown, what are our thoughts about the preservation of this facade today? Is everything still valid and in good condition? So it's to provide comfort and also ensure that we're working together moving forward.
I'm a lawyer. Easements are notoriously difficult to draft and enforce. Do you have an easement before us today that we can look at to gain some comfort from?
Through the chair, I do not have an easement already prepared. But I can tell you that we have been through this process before. We have a similar circumstance at one of our properties in Calgary, Alberta, whereby we have a heritage asset that is a smokestack. It is registered on title, and there are very specific requirements associated with the maintenance and the redevelopment, if you will, of that particular structure. So we have had legal counsel work with us on these kinds of things before, and we would seek that kind of input with the collaboration of Heritage Regina, so that we are all comfortable and that the city is comfortable with the language.
Again, we would only see that after we'd gone the deconstruction and reconstruction route. So do you understand why for us today there's not much comfort in an easement that we've never seen? If we don't like it when we eventually do see it and the wall's been deconstructed, what recourse do we have?
Through the chair, this is, again, a collaborative approach, and the details of the easement are not a one-sided undertaking. We anticipate working with legal counsel on both sides to construct something that works for everybody. So I would say that in a circumstance like this, registration on title, the fact that we're prepared to undertake a registration on title and make a commitment that a facade will be integrated into a future redevelopment, and that we're not allowed to have a development permit issued by the City of Regina until such time that City Council is comfortable with the redevelopment proposal and development application. That really does tie our hands.
In terms of reconstruction, is it your position that you would deconstruct, label, store, and reconstruct, produce a wall that was substantially the same as the facade that's currently there now?
Through the chair, exactly.
How can you do that knowing that bricks will be destroyed as it's deconstructed, knowing that as time passes there'll be a degradation of material? And I noticed through careful reading of the material that the word substantially, words like that were used to indicate that not every heritage aspect could be restored. Indeed, I even noticed, if you could give me just a half a second here, in the Brixton report, it mentions heritage elements are minimal to for the design aesthetic. How can we be sure that the design aesthetic of whatever is coming next doesn't overwhelm and compromise the heritage aspects?
Through the chair, that was the purpose of the exercise that we undertook with our architects, to provide conceptual ideas of how the facade would be incorporated into a future design development project. And administration and the other groups that we worked with, including Provincial Heritage Review Board, were pleased, and as was Heritage Regina, with the look and the design and the incorporation of that facade in a future development. that picture concept may not be 100% exactly what we end up building, the new part. But what we would register on title is that the facade, those portions of the facade, save and except the part that is not historical at the ground level, would be replaced in their exact location as per the current situation in the new design.
I'm missing something.
Sure.
Heritage Regina was here this afternoon, an hour ago, telling us they didn't support this in the clearest of language. Why do you now say they support it?
Through the chair, they have indicated that they were pleased with the concept drawings and how we integrated them for the future
Where did they indicate that?
in discussion.
But not here this afternoon, unless I was asleep.
Through the chair, also on August 16th, a letter was written by Heritage Regina that specifically said, we do not oppose the demolition of the Burns-Hanley building.
We're talking about the facade.
So we'll talk about the facade, yes, sir, through the chair. We have had discussions, and Heritage Regina has indicated that that we have improved and come a long way through the efforts of input, and that they are pleased with the look of what a future development could be.
You indicated that EDR supports your proposal. Who from Harvard sits on the EDR board?
Through the chair, I did not indicate that EDR.
Sorry, it's my mistake. I meant RD Bid. Who from Heritage Regina sits on RD Bid?
Through the chair, I'm not aware if somebody from Heritage Regina sits on the Regina.
That too is my mistake. Let me try again. RD Bid, you indicated that they supported your proposal for demolition and reconstruction. Who from Harvard sits on RD Bid?
Through the chair, Terry Klein from our company sits on the RD Bid board, and through the chair, we have consistently had a member of our company on that board for decades because we have a vested interest in the downtown, and we want to be contributors to supporting all downtown activities.
In deciding the RD Bid position, did your representative, your employee, recuse himself on a conflict of interest?
Through the chair, I did not participate in any conversation with the bid.
Thank you. You mentioned, you've asked us to have confidence. And yet we know from the Provincial Heritage Board decision, effectively Harvard disregarded the 2019 report, which said that reinforcement work needed to be done, wasn't done, and that led to further degradation. In other words, demolition by neglect. How do we know that you're still not trying to demolish this facade?
Through the chair, you're going to have confidence that we're not trying to demolish the facade by virtue of the city's involvement in how we store it, in our collaborative approach to the city being involved in inspecting it, and also by virtue of our very firm commitment and obligation which will be registered legally on title.
I want to just briefly touch on the Pocket Park, where the yoga classes are going to take place, where comedy shows, I think you said, were going to take place. What do yoga classes and comedy shows have to do with heritage?
Through the chair, they don't have anything to do with heritage. We are honoring heritage by virtue of a mural, which replicates the exact facade on the side of the parkade. We are providing a podium with the original plaque, honoring the site of the St. Mary's Church and its significance to the Métis Nation. We are also honoring Indigenous, the Indigenous community through artwork, which is integrated on that mural. And we are providing a story around the heritage of the Burns Hanley building at the site. So there is multiple components of referencing in the interim circumstance. At the same time, it becomes a space. Today it's a space that's empty and an unsafe space. We want to open the space up so that it can be used as a place that the public can enjoy, that they can engage in multiple activities while also looking at the references of heritage while they're having their lunch at the picnic table or engaging in some kind of activity or programmable event that might be occurring.
And could all of that be done and still brace the facade and leave the facade there? So the facade, which really is the expression of heritage, the original expression of heritage, remains?
Our consultants, through the chair, our consultants have indicated to us that that is a higher risk proposition. And in our opinion, all of that is not achievable in the same way as it is with an open, engaging, inviting frontage at this time. A wall separating a space does not necessarily, in our opinion, create an invitation to go into a small concealed area in downtown Regina, which currently has some challenges on the safety front as it is.
In your material, you presented sketches, an interim plan for redevelopment in place of the final plan, which is what the bylaw anticipates. Those sketches, is there any detail beyond those sketches that you've presented to us today?
Through the chair, we have provided concept drawings that show a myriad of kinds of activities that could occur there. What we are indicating is that the heritage references for sure, and the greenery for sure, and the retractable gate, if you will, at the front for sure will be components of this pocket park.
And are there sketches beyond, I think we have 2 or 3 in our material. Is there detail beyond that in terms of your future plan? The sketches we have are really just very basic drawings, really.
Through the chair, The sketches are meant to provide, they're meant to provide a vision of how we plan to redevelop the space in an interim way.
Is it fair to say that there's just a very general vision that there's no specifics attached here? There's no detailed design. They're just, as you say, a vision. Is that a fair statement?
Through the chair, no, that's not a fair statement.
How, okay, can you tell me what more is there than the 2 or 3 drawings that I've got in my package?
Through the chair, there are very specific items in the drawing, which we have in multiple presentations committed to. One is the podium component, which will hold the plaque for future reference, and the mural, which is the exact replica of the current facade, and the art references of the Métis Nation on the facade of the parkade. In addition, the pergola and the gate, and the greenery and the picnic tables. What happens in addition to that is flexible, adaptable, and driven by community needs.
You mentioned 3 years as a possibility when all of this will get going. That's the earliest date I've heard. I've heard estimates of 5 years, and I think I read 10 years. Is Harvard really committing to develop within 3 years on this footprint?
Through the chair, we're not committing to develop in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. We're committing to develop in response to a market opportunity and demand, and we have shown time and time again that that commitment is one that we have executed on.
Could it be as long as 10 years?
Through the chair, I can't answer that question today. Through the chair, I believe that the market opportunity is imminent.
Imminent, through the chair. Imminent? What's imminent mean?
Through the chair, it does take a year to develop proper architectural drawings if you are pursuing something, and then each of our large-scale constructions do take a minimum of 24 months.
And is it possible? What you know about market conditions today, changing economy, still coming out of COVID, the amount of vacant space in downtown Regina, that Harvard might be building in 20 months on this footprint?
Through the chair, as I indicated, preparation time is 12 months at a minimum. And through the chair, it's very possible that within 12 months, there may be some initiatives that are occurring in the city that would create opportunities, not necessarily office opportunities. We have a lot of office, but other opportunities that that complement other initiatives, and we feel confident that there are a number of things that are occurring in our economy, including all the ag tech initiatives and the rising prices of commodities at this point in time, which Saskatchewan is very rich in. All of those things spur an opportunity for business to want to be here and invest here, and that creates opportunity. And we feel that that is relatively imminent.
I want to ask one last question. I'm faced, and all the councillors are faced, with trying to make a decision, which comes down to how to preserve a facade. There's two models on the table. Both models have been successful in some cities. Both have clear risks. There is a lot of information, as our discussion has shown, that is not before us today. None of us, as I mentioned, are experts in this field. Would you be agreeable if this matter was referred back to the administration and the administration was asked to identify, together with you and with Heritage Regina, an objective, independent, third-party expert in this kind of heritage preservation and building to give us advice on the relative pros and cons of these two models so that we might be able to make some kind of informed decision as opposed to operating on intuition, which in a matter as important as this seems unsatisfactory.
Through the chair, I would not be in support of that approach. We feel that that the demolition of this building needs to occur imminently, immediately.
Talking about the facade, not the building.
Through the chair, we feel also that we have consulted with a myriad of the best experts who have long-standing reputations and a multitude of experience and projects in our own city and in other cities. And we take their advice. Clearly because of their expertise. And we are confident that their recommendations are how we need to proceed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your patience with my questioning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Bresciani.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just in regards to just talking about the facade and the whole thing, was it ever considered that some of the bricks, if the whole facade could not be kept, which is deemed unsafe, if there a portion, or could that be something that is considered that some of the bricks that could be used on the sides to the entry to this gateway of this park? There's two things I ask about that. Number one is education on our heritage, to understand how old these bricks are. There's a lot of information that people don't even understand. Is that something that you could look at or consider? Through the chair.
Through the chair, absolutely. In our original submission, we had actually proposed that the original bricks be that the podium that is going to be front and center of the parkette with the original plaque, that be made out of the original bricks of the building. And there is absolutely no reason why we could not add a few more bricks to perhaps form the base of a little bit of the base of the mural that we're contemplating, or in a few other locations. And there's absolutely no reason why some of the language that we have contemplated on the mural cannot and should identify that that these are original bricks from this building that will someday compose the future facade in its original form, and that these bricks come from 1903, and that the heritage of this building is a result of it being part of a very important heritage district. So in answer to your question, we certainly would be willing and wanting to work with those who would like to see some additional bricks added in the interim condition.
Thank you. In regards to the space, I call it a community space down there. I think it would be wonderful. We've seen it in many other larger cities where they activate parks or gathering places for. Would it be something that you would also be probably working with Regina Downtown, the community or the community down there, to look at different ways to even raise some funds to that kind of thing to build community, not just downtown but within our cities? That's something that this park space, you see it kind of being utilized that way, through the chair?
Through the chair, absolutely. We do think it's a great opportunity for, kickoff of the United Way campaigns, or, selling flowers for, to raise money for diabetes, or, a variety of kinds of specific activities that are, that are more conducive to a smaller area as opposed to out in a large park environment. So we're actually excited about that. It's another reason to, all of our tenants right now are weighing in and asking, what is going to be happening this summer. We're trying to get our staff back to work. We want people to be downtown. This is a tool and an opportunity to create some of that activity that creates the want to be coming downtown.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks very much. Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, Mayor. Those comments piqued my interest in, might not be exactly what we're talking about, but it came to 12 to 24 months, and you said something about development imminent or going. We need people downtown, and you said this might not be an office, could be residential. I mean, I just asked the question because other cities are actually working on that, bringing people downtown. Was that something that's just it's a long range question, but would you be able to comment?
Through the chair, absolutely. In the interim condition, our objective, along with RD Bid, is to bring people downtown in as many ways as we can. This site, because of a smaller footprint, it is more conducive probably to a residential component or a boutique hotel in its current size, as opposed to any kind of an office configuration. Having said that, we anticipate that there will be retail at grade, and we anticipate that it will be a structure that has a mix of uses.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundura. Councillor Mancinelli.
Thank you. I have a question. How long have you been in control of this property? Thank you. As a large corporation, do you not generally subscribe to asset management policies for upkeep of your assets? How did this, was this allowed to get in this type of condition?
The building, and at the time there were occupants in the building, and we maintained it as best we could for a period of time until it was it didn't meet code, and it was undesirable for tenants because there were other buildings that were newer of more interest per se. And over that period of time, we did do pointing of bricks. We did do some work to the cornice above. Over the years, we had done some repair work to the front and also a little bit of patching on the roof. But really, quite honestly, and we presented this in our first application, we had budgeted to do some more repair work right before COVID hit, and at that point in time, all of our capital projects stopped, and so that length of period pushed this building over the edge in terms of being able to maintain it. It has always been our intent to redevelop that site, and therefore to put $6.2 million into a structure of that nature is not a prudent asset management approach to a piece of property like this. Having said that, we have been involved in heritage for many, many years, and we do honor it, and we think it's very important. So we always anticipated incorporating and reusing the important elements of these buildings.
Appreciate that. I guess that's all I have, because I can't phrase what I have to say next in the form of a question, so I better leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mancinelli, for the check in yourself. Seeing no one further from council, I have a few questions. This property was purchased for redevelopment, is that correct?
Through the chair, correct.
When you purchased it, you realized it was in the Heritage Conservation District, correct?
Through the chair, we were advised that it was in the Heritage Conservation District, but that it was not a designated asset specifically. There was a gray interpretation of what we were advised of.
So in terms of protecting the facade as it's been deemed heritage, you accept that report, correct?
Through the chair, correct.
Thank you. And you'll have to ask me, sorry, pardon me for my indulgence. Mr. Taylor that you referred to earlier is who?
Through the chair, Brad Taylor is an engineer with J.C. Kenyon.
And he has worked on heritage properties, that's what you reported, correct?
Through the chair, yes, and the heritage properties that I listed, and I can repeat them if you
Please
like.
do.
Sorry?
Please do. I missed writing it down last time.
Brad Taylor, I'll just go through his whole shtick here.
Great.
Active member of the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals, member of the Association of Preservation Technology International, previously served on the board of the Saskatchewan Heritage Foundation, worked on the most significant heritage buildings in Regina, including the Legislative Building, the Globe Theatre, Connaught Library, the Leader Building, which Harvard was involved in as well, College Avenue Campus, and Dark Hall.
In that report that was presented by J.C. Kenyon in 2021, there was a recommendation for the demolition of the building. Is that correct?
Through the chair, correct.
Would you be willing to share Mr. Taylor's opinion as it relates to the facade or the fact that this property is heritage? Did he have an opinion with regards to its saving or otherwise?
Through the chair, he didn't provide an opinion one way or the other. He just provided his his expertise with regard to the structure.
And one more person, in terms of Brixton, masonry restorative services, I believe is what you said, correct?
Through the chair, Brixton Masonry has completed extensive restorative services to the College Avenue campus, Dark Hall, and the Leader Building. They've also completed major restorative scopes of work to buildings including Viterra Head Office, Regina Courthouse, Clay Bank Brick Plant, and the Reed Stenhouse Building, among others.
Is it your opinion that Brixton values heritage properties?
Through the chair, that would be our assumption, that it is a very important component of their business and their philosophy.
There are a few questions raised that I'd like to take over. There's the supposition that a conservative estimate would be that 20 to 30% of the brick would be lost in the process of taking the facade down. How is that combated in terms of if it's going to be reconstructed brick by brick? How do you combat the potential for loss of brick? Do you have any information on that?
Through the chair, Brixton has advised us that matching brick may prove challenging, but that it's not unachievable. And they do recognize that there is potential for some loss.
Through the chair, if I may.
Please go ahead.
It's also worth noting that the entire building is built of brick, and the facade comprises a very small component of the entire building. In the event that there is some small portion of the brick that might be lost during the decomposition, we have an entire building of other brick to use as replacement parts.
And the sides of the building and the brick that's been used is a match to the brown brick on the front?
Exact match.
In the report that the Heritage Appeal Board came back with, or I'm going to say in the documents that we've received, there's support from the downtown bid for the project as presented. Do you have any insight as to why?
Through the chair, just for clarification, support from the Provincial Heritage Review Board or the RD bid?
There's mention that the RD bid was supportive of the project. Your project.
Of the project, okay. Through the chair, our engagement with RD bid has been on multiple levels, and excluding Terry Klein. They are supportive, and their entire board did vote and get together on this particular item because they see, number one, the current condition is not conducive to supporting a productive and safe environment in the downtown. And number two, it creates an opportunity for RD Bid to execute on a number of their initiatives as it relates to engaging the public to bring them downtown and supporting their mission statement in creating a better downtown and supporting business and community groups.
What happens, the recommendation number 3 presented by administration within the report before council recommends approval of the plan that you have in terms of deconstructing and storage, et cetera, with clearly mitigating elements around it. What happens if that's not approved?
Through the chair, We have looked at a number of other alternatives if it's not approved. But we are concerned about the safety of the circumstance today and elongating the process is a tenuous prospect. If it is not approved, we will have to discuss with the city and our consultants what other options are available to us. And there don't seem to be many at this point in time.
Thank you very much. Have you done something like this before? Have you deconstructed a facade and put something back up?
Through the chair, yes, we have. The old McCallum Hill building was the entrance and the cornice were preserved and stored until they could be rebuilt in the new Tower 1.
Did you receive any feedback at the time that that's not actually heritage conservation?
Through the chair, no, we did not.
I believe that's all I have. No further questions from council. Well, thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you please return to the gallery.
Thank you.
We'll now consider item CM 22-14, Heritage 1863 Cornwall Street. Can I have a member of administration please introduce the report? Ms. Shaley?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Masters. Harvard Developments, the owner of the subject property known as the Burns Hanley Building, applied to the city for approval to demolish the property. City Council denied the demolition application and gave notice of its intention to issue a repair order pursuant to Section 31 of the Heritage Property Act, requiring the owner to undertake all necessary repairs to stabilize the property and to preserve the facade. The owner objected to both the denial of the demolition approval and the issuance of a repair order, and City Council referred the matter to the Provincial Review Board for a hearing. The Review Board has recommended that the city and the owner consider a redevelopment plan that includes the preservation of the facade of the building. Alternatively, if the facade is not able to be preserved, the Review Board recommends negotiation of terms guaranteeing the reconstruction of the facade in a future development. If the parties can come to agreement on mutually acceptable plan to reconstruct the facade, the Review Board suggests that Council should revoke the notice of intention to issue a repair order on the property and approve the application for demolition, which includes acceptable conditions for reconstruction. So this approach is outlined in the report in front of you, and Ms. Dawson and Ms. Hill are here today to help answer questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shaley. Can I get a mover on the report? Councillor Shaw, seconded by Councillor Bresciani. Thank you. Councillor Shaw, did you want to open up discussion?
I don't have a lot to say. I think this has gone on long enough, and something really needs to be done. A decision needs to be made. Empathy goes to all parties included in here. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Stevens.
Great, thank you. For administration, I think one of the most fatiguing elements of these back and forths is the ongoing combat over which expert account to believe. Was this something that was assessed internally? I know the city does employ engineers. There was also a report and advice offered by a provincial agency that reviewed the heritage status. Would it be possible now or in the future for the city itself to offer us the independent assessment rather than having these dueling accounts that come before us.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'm going to direct these questions to Ms. Hill.
Through you, Mayor Masters. Yes, absolutely. And in fact, there's a process in place now to do a third-party review for this type of application when it comes in. In this case, there was a sense of urgency around the application at the time, and we did do some internal review of the materials that have been provided, and felt confident that there was an accurate reflection of the condition of the building. And so it's something that we're still kind of working through in terms of how that process gets employed, but there will be additional reports in the future. We'll have that third-party review attached.
Thank you. Through the chair, there's also been a dueling account here of whether or not we can shore the building and provide temporary use as been proposed by the applicant, or whether that would be unsafe and we need to dismantle and create a park or whatever the space might be temporarily. Can you provide an expert account on whether or not it is feasible to shore the facade and have a temporary use as proposed here?
Through the chair, I don't think we would propose to have an expert opinion beyond what's been submitted from the reports in front of you. I think there's a question both around safety in terms of the structural safety of the facade, but then also the degree to which you can create an effective public space behind that can be appropriately activated and safe for users. And so those are both things that we would want to be considering as we're continuing to work with Harvard on the redevelopment plan.
Thank you. One of the recommendations through the chair is an agreement, which we've heard discussed publicly. There's a commitment from the applicant that at some point, when a development plan has been firmed up, that a facade would be reconstructed. What guarantee do we have, this might be a question for legal, that that commitment is maintained perhaps years or decades into the future? And I'll only reference something that I think we've forbidden ourselves from speaking about, which is the glockenspiel, which sat around for quite some time. We don't want another incident like that. So what kind of legal assurances and commitments can we guarantee into the future if we go ahead with this?
Mayor Masters, a couple of things. The heritage easement that's been discussed is a statutory mechanism in the Heritage Property Act that's recognized as a way to secure these heritage obligations. The other thing is that it would be something that would be, because it's in the nature of an easement, it's a form of a property agreement and obligation. It would be registered on title. So it would run with the property and would survive any sale of the property to a future owner. We would also be looking at a form of performance security, acknowledging that at some point in the future there would need to be additional work done. And so we would need to be confident that there is money set aside to satisfy that requirement. And I guess the only other comment I would make is that these terms and conditions would need to be in place before the demolition of the property would be approved. So those are all things that come into play here. And we can acknowledge, although it's not something that corporately we have done much of, if at all, on the heritage front, it is a well-accepted practice across the country. And so if this was something that went forward, we would be looking to contractual precedents from other jurisdictions as well to make sure that we're covering all the bases.
Through the chair, comment on that last point. I think the big issue here is trust, and that we don't have a really good track record as a city or a community of maintaining built heritage, and that seems to be the thrust behind Ms. Schmidt's deposition to us today. And we're making great gains in the right direction, and so I'm pleased to hear that this is something we want to pursue, if I'm hearing this correctly, now and into the future. In other words, the compromise can be built in around how we preserve heritage and isn't maintain it or demolish it, but rather incorporate. So is this would be the precedent for allowing different approaches to preserving built heritage? Is that correct?
From the legal side, Mayor Masters, that's yes, but I'll defer to administration on the broader question.
Ms. Hill?
Through you, Mayor Masters, certainly I think our practice moving forward is to be really building more collaboration with property owners alongside early and consistent communication around the expectations for conservation. One thing I'll mention is that this approach that we're discussing today, both the facade retention in place and the reconstruction option, are not really accepted, recommended heritage conservation practices. This is a last-ditch effort to maintain some semblance of the heritage value in this building. So it's not something that we want to use as a consistent mechanism. It's costly. It's there's lots of concerns there. But really, what we want are conserved whole properties with intact features. And so that's what we'll be working towards in our discussions with property owners.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just want to make sure my legal understanding is accurate here. Because this commitment is attached to the property, if Harvard were to sell that property, whoever in the future purchases this space would also be required to fulfill this part of the bargain. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's only one question to be answered here. And that question is how we preserve the facade of the Burns-Hanley building, which everyone, including the Provincial Heritage Board, says is a heritage asset. And we have two choices before us. One is that we deconstruct, number, store, and reconstruct. And the other is that we shore up the existing facade. This is not about a pocket park. It's not even about safety. It's about enforcing our Victoria Park Heritage Conservation bylaw. If we ignore that bylaw here, then we invite the community to say what other bylaws should be ignored. We're not going to get a second chance here. The glockenspiel was mentioned. What comes to my mind is the destruction of the old City Hall, now universally recognized as a very tragic decision in this city. We are looking at a similar historic corner, which considers this building, the Burns-Hanley building, the Western Canada building on the corner, owned by the Schofields, and the Novia Hotel. And I understand that Harvard has just applied for destruction of that building as well. So we're at a crossroads here. And all I ask is that we make this critical decision on the basis of solid evidence before us, on the basis of fact, and not on the basis of intuition. We don't have that fact before us. I'm sure every councillor read very carefully this material. I was struck by the number of facts that were presented to us this afternoon, other experts, other expert opinions. None of that is before us today and should be. But most critically, what we need from the administration to help us, and what they've just told us is available, is we need some arm's length expert advice on the best way to preserve this heritage facade. Of the two choices, we know that both have risks and both have drawbacks. Ms. Schmidt pointed out some of the drawbacks to the deconstruction construction approach. Harvard pointed out drawbacks to the facade buttressing approach. Right now, left with that, we'd be guessing. We'd be operating on hunch. It's my submission to you that we can get better advice, more objective advice, more arm's length advice, and get it in fairly short order. And then we can make a critical decision about this project, as opposed to saying, well, yes, we're getting our act together for the future. Well, the future's upon us. We're going to have to decide now. I want to say just one other thing. This project is entirely unique. I simply do not accept the development of the kind that Harvard is contemplating is likely to take place on that site in the next 2 or 3 years. I think it's 5 years out, but more likely 10 years out. We have a few weeks here to get better advice, to get factual advice that will enable us to make a decision. So on that basis, I'm going to move that we refer this matter back to the administration to seek an arm's length, third-party expert opinion on the best approach for preserving the facade of the Burns-Hanley building. That expert opinion should be given by an expert who is both familiar with heritage and familiar with heritage construction. So, Madam Chair, I'm moving that as a referral motion.
Councillor Hawkins requires a seconder. Councillor Skidniak. Referral motion will be placed up for you, and we'll go to vote. All right, you see before you the referral motion. City Clerk, I'd ask that you start the vote.
Through you, Mayor Masters, the vote is tied. 5 voting in favor, 5 voting against. So the referral motion is lost.
Councillor Hawkins, you have just a little under a minute left to speak. Please proceed.
In light of that, I only want to say that I don't have sufficient confidence in the prospect that the administration recommendation will result in the preservation of the Burns-Hanley facade, especially given the length of time involved to be able to support the recommendation. I'll be voting against the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, Mayor. First question I have is the questions I've asked. I asked about the safety. That's my main concern. The next question with the safety is who will be liable, who's responsible if something does happen, if this stands? How does that work? I mean, there are pros and cons on all ends. If I mean, we know that anything could happen. So who's liable on this if this facade stands up and something happens to it? Who will be liable for that?
Mr. Weary, I believe that's for you.
Mayor Masters, I'd be cautious about providing anything definitive on this topic. Certainly the city is a heritage regulator of this property, but we certainly don't have control of the property. That is the owner's responsibility.
Councillor Fundura.
Thank you for that. I respect the answer. Going forward is hearing and seeing and looking at other cities, how the restoration or taking down brick by brick and putting it back up. Seeing a project in Ottawa just recently, and the new the old fits into the new and repurposed. And I mentioned before is that we are talking about rejuvenating downtown. I do respect the Pocket Park. I respect the what the Burns Henley the building stands for. The church that was there before when Louis Riel was held in. I respect all of that. But we need to make a decision one way or the other. We did have last year a lot of information on the structure, and there's conversation about trust moving forward. I believe this is the beginning a beginning of that conversation about we need to start somewhere, and I mean, we don't start that trust and start that cooperation and collaborative work with our industry, city, who drives the process and policies. We will be here. New council would be here again dealing with the same thing. I see taking this facade down, storing it, putting it back up. There's more than enough bricks to restore that. Safety of it is perfect. The description of what Burns Henley stand for, Louis Riel, part of the church, it's all there. It's part of that engaging the community and folks coming downtown. So by keeping the facade up, I don't think that's the right way to go. I feel uncomfortable. It's all about the safety. And I don't know if there is a way of, I know there are engineers, you can probably put a crane and hold it up, but I don't have the confidence that would be the best way to go. So I have a few more things, but you know what, Mayor, I will leave it at that. I am going to be voting in favor of the city's report. The reason for that is city, heritage, the applicant has sat down together, talked about what the best scenario. I will take advice of the city in their report. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fundura. Councillor Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Through the chair, I have some questions regarding the hearing that happened with the Saskatchewan Heritage Foundation Review Board. And I know that there were people from administration that were there. So the whole reason that this matter was referred to that body was to try to get a third-party independent review and maybe some clarity. And we really did not get any clarity in that report. They said the facade should be preserved, but they did not indicate what was the best method. Can I ask the administration in terms of the person that, I think it was Ms. Hill that was there or whoever else was there, in terms of, is this not the role of the review board to actually come to a definitive answer like that? Because I think it really does matter in terms of if we ever refer things back there again. So just a comment in terms of was this appropriate to be referred there? Or why they didn't give a definitive answer in terms of the best method for preserving the facade?
Through you, Mayor Masters, the process was correct. So when there is an objection to a decision related to the Heritage Property Act, a decision made by council, that the next step is to go to the Provincial Review Board for a hearing. So that was all required through the Act. And I think, you know, the process at the Heritage Review Board is thorough. But it is citizens who are sitting on that board as volunteers and who are there because they have an interest and passion and some level of expertise. And they review all of the material that's provided and provide back an assessment. But those comments are not binding on council. And so, you know, there's still this additional step that we take to have more conversation about what's right in our community and for our heritage assets here.
Okay, thank you for that. A further question is regarding if the decision is to agree with the applicant today, will the city be involved or consulted in terms of the decisions of the storage of the bricks, like to kind of be a second body to ensure that there is safe and adequate storage of the bricks? Through the chair.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I believe that there was certainly openness to that from Harvard, and we're willing to continue to work with them on that. To the extent that we have the ability to advise, we'll certainly do so.
Okay, thank you. I have seen the two different methods that have been discussed today. I've seen a wall, a heritage wall that's been shored up and preserved that way. I've seen a building when we were, as was mentioned earlier, the Ogilvy building, where the bricks were taken down and then reconstructed. And I've seen a empty heritage building where it was braced and it was the center then was repurposed. So there are different methods, and it is difficult, as has been pointed out, to determine, you know, what is the best case in this particular situation. I am going to take a leap of faith, and I am going to support this. But I really do hope that in future discussions on heritage and preservation of heritage, that there's a lot more information that comes forward for us to make a better decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stadenchuk. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you very much. First off, to our staff and administration, I guess, every time we have a demolition for heritage property, council finds exactly in the same spot. We've always got two sides and we're caught in the middle. And we thought with having a policy in place that this would help us. And we still continue to have that same dilemma today. So I'm going to ask staff that when we need the information, and as Councillor Hawkins indicated, to get an arm's length review. So we always see both sides come forward and they each bring their own people and then they give their side of what needs to be said. And then we sit here like sitting ducks saying, well, we've got this and we've got this. What are we supposed to do? How are we going to take this forward and actually consider a third party outside to look at it holistically, not taking any side? How can we learn from this piece today? Because we've got probably many more coming. Through the chair.
Administration, Ms. Hill.
Through you, Mayor Masters, so the process that we're implementing would include an engineering study and options for redevelopment that would be proposed by a combination engineer, architect, experts of that nature. I think I would maybe just clarify that we weren't anticipating engaging additional heritage expertise specifically. It would be more in terms of the structural redevelopment options and the assessment there. That's what's been discussed in our conversations and in the procurement work that we've done so far. So if there was interest in expanding that to additional heritage consultants and that expertise, then we would need to look at that further. But we would anticipate that in the next applications of this nature that come before council, that we would have those reviews in place.
Okay, thank you. I did hear that, and I would say that, it was great to see both sides working together collectively to come to some agreements, not perfect, but some working together collaboratively. I appreciated that as well. But I would like to ask in regards to when we know how many of these heritage buildings we have, we know that, how do we know as a council, or how does staff know that we could have many, many more out there that are just sitting there and nothing maintained? Like, how do we prevent that? Through the chair.
Through you, Mayor Masters, so we began a process of inspections in 2021 where we are looking at an exterior visual inspection of every heritage property. And going forward, or we did do that in 2021, and then going forward, those that were flagged for as areas of concern, we would be going back on an annual basis and checking the ones that are in good condition less frequently. And so when we have identified now through those inspections properties of concern, we are notifying the property owner that we have incentives available, grants and tax exemptions that they can apply for. We've indicated in the recent incentive program that was approved by council that properties that are in need of repair would be a high priority for those grants and tax exemptions when they go through the review process. So we're starting to put in place those processes to be able to understand the condition of these buildings and to start to work with property owners to bring them into a better condition. If we're not able to work collaboratively with the property owner, there is a process through the Heritage Property Act whereby council can determine that additional actions are warranted, up to and including a repair order, as was discussed in this property's case early at the end of last year.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment, again, I will support the recommendation coming from administration. We've heard it again through some of the experts, but also again when we referred it back to the board. But I will say that this is a key spot in our city. It's downtown Victoria Park. And I want to ensure that in this pocket park, we do have the heritage designation, which we heard there'll be some today. And I hope there's the education piece. I want that brick. And if there's a portion of the facade that could be even ailed out to be a piece of that, to be the entryway and the gateway of that pocket park, I think is very important. Number one, because I think we don't do enough education around our heritage. If someone can go up and actually touch and see, feel the brick, it's over 100 years old from that building, maybe there would be a little bit more care and attention to some of these buildings. So I will support this as is, and again, I look forward to, and as we heard, I think a big piece of that is the community will be a community space that they will be able to use, and it will be engaging. And I think that there is a need for that as well, temporarily, rather than sitting as a vacant building and deteriorating and dilapidating. So I will support this one at this time. Thank you.
I have Councillor LeBlanc. You are up next.
Thank you. I want to seek some clarification on what options 2 and 3 mean. So I understand the facade would either stay up or might get put back up. Just so I'm understanding right through the chair, are we saying they would then build a new building behind the facade? So you would essentially walk through an old wall, and then you would reach a new wall, which is the exterior of a new building. Is that right, through the chair?
Ms. Howe?
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'll try to answer and then clarify, I guess, if required. So I think if a facade retention was pursued where the facade is retained in place and stabilized, we don't have any assumptions at this point about what would happen behind that building. At some point, if Harvard wished to develop that, or behind that facade, I should say, if they wish to develop it further, that would come through an additional redevelopment application. The idea of deconstructing the facade, storing it, and then reconstructing it at some point in the future, it would be incorporated into that new building. So my understanding is that their intention would be to have that facade as still the first thing that you enter, and then the other three sides of the building would be, of the new building would be attached to that, if that clarifies.
I see. Yeah, so just so I'm right, so the facade would actually be part of the next building. It wouldn't be like there are two front facades of the rebuilt building. It would just get incorporated into it. Is that right?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Thank you. Maybe a question for legal or someone, which is, if we pursue option 3 and the assumption is the facade goes down, the facade is to come back up. If Harvard decides not to put the facade back up, is it your view that under the legal arrangement we would be able to force them to do so, or we could sort of just sue them for not doing so? Through you, the chair.
There would be the main option, enforcement option in the Heritage Property Act is to require the property owner to do the heritage work. And if that work is not done, then the city can take steps to do the work and then add the cost to the property. And there are other ways to civilly recover the costs if the city has to step in to do that work. So it would be no different than other types of heritage work that is required, that is ordered to be done, just under the authority of this heritage easement.
Thank you. Just so I understand the implications of that through you, Madam Chair. So it would be essentially if Harvard was, or the next property owner was not rebuilding this facade to our satisfaction, we would essentially seize the existing bricks being stored, build it ourselves, and then attempt to recover the cost through them. Is that about accurate?
Yes, that would be one scenario, yep, that we would do it that way.
Thank you. So my view on the 3 options outlined, so option 1 is keep the building up, option 2 is keep a wall up, option 3 is take the wall down, put it back up. It seems to me options 2 and 3, where just one wall, one facade stays up, not the whole building, has a lot of water in the wine. So we've tried to split the difference in a way that it doesn't quite make sense. And it seems to me, if we're concerned about this heritage property, we ought to keep it up in its entirety. Or if we're not that concerned, I think we can deal with it. We can let it get demolished. But keeping one of the 4 walls up strikes me as quite cumbersome. So I'm going to move an amendment to the report and suggest option 1 be pursued.
Councillor LeBlanc requires a seconder. Councillor Stevens? Go ahead, Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you. So I think 2 points strongly support option 1. One is it's in a heritage conservation district. I think we've had lots of conversations about taking that seriously. And I think one of the things that means is we need to have some restrictions on demolition permits and things of this sort when it comes up. So having one facade up, I think undermines that to some extent and has issues about stability and so on. That's number 1, is if we're serious about heritage, let's be serious about heritage, not just keeping one wall up in the image of sort of a picture. The other is with respect to what I think would be a fair concern is option one would be very expensive for the landowner. Maybe we shouldn't do it because it's not economically feasible. And I would say the cost of it flows from their lack of asset management over the last 20 years. So I don't think one gets to say, I let the property get into this condition and now it's too expensive to repair, so I don't want to repair it. I think we heard from the proponent in response to Mayor Masters' questions. They knew this was in a heritage conservation district when they got it. I suggest that this is a sophisticated company. They were sophisticated in the 90s. They can pay lawyers. What do these things mean? What can I do with the property? They either went in with eyes wide open or they should have. And so I don't think they can sort of cry foul 20 years later when we say it's a heritage conservation district, we're going to treat it like one. So I think it's consistent with our policies and there's no unfairness to the proponent. So I'm moving option one and would seek your support. Thank you.
One moment, council, while clerks get the amendment up on the board. Council, before you, you have an amendment, which was what will be spoken to now. Councilor Messinelli, did you wish to speak to the amendment?
No, I think I just need a moment. I was waiting to speak to the original.
Okay. Do any members of council wish to speak to the amendment? Councilor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this amendment. It has a certain honesty about it that appeals to me. I repeat the point that Councillor LeBlanc made. This is a sophisticated company which knew what the rules were and has chosen through repeated demolition efforts to defeat the intent of the Heritage District. I think if we're serious about heritage, we have to be serious about it for everyone. This is an important corner. I believe that we are going to lose the heritage corner altogether because I don't think a 15-year delay, which is what I think it'll take, is going to work. So I'd rather see us endorse heritage and leave the building intact and work with that than see a complete retreat. I'd also rather see real heritage. The notion of a pocket park, the notion of a mural, all of that is ersatz heritage. Heritage 1 degree removed from the real thing, which is in fact the building. So I endorse Councillor LeBlanc's motion and I'm anxious to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Shaw.
We heard from experts. I do believe it was J.C. Kenyon. These aren't stupid people. These are educated people that have said this is for a safety reason needs to be demolished. We can't talk about where we were 10 or 15 years ago. It's where we are now. If something should have been done when they bought the building and it was a heritage building, then we should have done it then. Now that the building has gone past repair, now that the building is in the type of distress that it's in now, we need to deal with the issue that's now and right now. To keep this building up, from the experts that stated, it's not safe, it's dangerous. Moving forward, maybe we're gonna get our act together and start helping our heritage buildings. But as of right now, that didn't happen with this building. So we are where we are right now. Keeping it up, according to the experts, it's not safe. So I won't support this.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Zakidniak.
I support this amendment, and I just want to, I'm looking at option 1 right now. And I want to note that it says, to undertake all necessary repairs and other measures to stabilize the building and preserve the facade at minimum. I think we've heard not that this can't be done, but that folks feel there's a thought that it may be expensive. I don't think that we've heard that it can't be done. And so there will be an assessment about how much preservation of the building is possible within option 1. And I think I still believe that we need an outside additional expert opinion. And I think option 1 allows for there to be additional consideration about what level of preservation of the building is possible and to preserve as much as possible of the building. I think this is a good option to move forward to ensure that we're making the best decision to preserve a heritage space in Regina.
Thank you, Councillor Zakidniak. Councillor Mancinelli.
Just going over all the information provided, the recommendation from the province talks about economic conditions and redevelopment and market conditions. Going into this, it wasn't even up for debate about this being salvageable or not. I never considered it this way before. And I take the points on heritage strongly. I don't think I'm comfortable making this decision right now in this context, and I think I'd like to table this. I think I'd like some time to think about this, and I think I'd like to move a tabling motion for this to be thought out a little bit more.
Councillor, we have a tabling motion on the floor. Councillor Mancinelli needs a seconder. Councillor Zakidniak. City Clerk, could you please call the vote on tabling motion? The entire report with the amendment that's on the floor is tabled. Tabled until next council meeting.
Through you, Mayor Masters, the motion carries 6-4 with the following members voting in favor of tabling this to the next City Council meeting. Councillors Hawkins, Stadnichuk, Zakidniak, Stevens, LeBlanc, and Councillor Mancinelli. And the following voting against are Councillors Bresciani, Findura, Shaw, and Mayor Masters.
Thanks to the City Clerk.
So if he's still here.
I'd call on Delegate Cameron Chiquette. I'd like you to please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you happen to reside. You'll have 5 minutes to present to City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to answer any questions they may have for you. Good afternoon.
Well, thank you, Mayor Masters and members of City Council. I outlined my presentation as being here for 2 reasons. One, to introduce myself to you and appear before you for the first time 2, to provide some insight and commentary, and 3rd, hopefully to breathe a little bit of life back into council chambers this afternoon after a lengthy debate here on heritage. So my name's Cameron Chiquette. I'm the CEO of the Saskatchewan Landlord Association. I reside in Saskatoon, and we're a provincial association that represents rental housing providers from across the province. And I'm here to lend my support in principle to the amendments that are being put forward in this report today to ensure that property owners are taking care of their properties. And I can tell you that we have a lot of experience in Saskatoon on this file, and are really appreciative of the administration's efforts in Saskatoon to work with rental housing providers and property owners in general and in maintaining properties. Rental housing providers that we represent and general community members all want to see communities that are vibrant, that are healthy, and that derelict properties are dealt with to ensure property values are maintained, crime is reduced, and the health and safety of renters and individuals in general is supported. I can tell you that from consultations with our members, the boarding up of properties is primarily a security measure to ensure that squatters and vagrancy doesn't occur in those properties. And we certainly appreciate the generalized kind of structure operating model that this city has when compared to Saskatoon's, because in Saskatoon we've seen that when they have specialized inspectors, a property owner sees multiple individuals, and the continuity that can be built in the amendments under the City of Regina's model is certainly appreciated. It's like when we all deal with one customer service agent with a business, there's just a lot of value in that. And I know our members appreciate the structure here when comparing that to Saskatoon. We have and concur with the information in the report around increases in crime and homelessness. We're no stranger to the CIS argument across this province and are certainly sympathetic to the organizations and the rental housing providers that are dealing with that. But I can say that it's important for our organization and for the city in our mind to ensure that rental housing providers and property owners are not burdened by excess regulatory burdens to ensure that the city remains investment friendly. So with that, folks, it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I'm available for any questions, but wanted to lend my support and my commentary to the report before you today in regards to helping maintain property values in this city and ensuring that derelict, vacant, and abandoned buildings are dealt with through proactive bylaw enforcement and through partnerships with property owners rather than just a heavy hand. So with that, I'm available for any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chiquette. Do any members of council have any questions for the delegate? I don't, no, one moment, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I'm kind of curious as to what role you could play in helping to regulate some of your own members. You know, the word slumlord is tossed around. There are great landlords. I've spoken to them. They are frustrated. What role can you play in actually disciplining and making better some of those property owners that are contributing to the blight, to defend against and in defense of members that are actually doing their best to maintain the community standards?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Stevens. It's something that as an association we deal with regularly, that the same few bad apples ruin the bunch, right? And not only from a brand perspective, but from an industry perspective. I've only been with the association for a few years now, but I can tell you we're committed to building a voluntary certification program and a robust disciplinary process at our association to regulate our own members to a greater degree. There are those provisions for property managers under the Saskatchewan Real Estate Commission, but there is nothing for just rental housing providers. Any councillor here could be a landlord just because they have a basement suite and simply just needs to adhere to the bylaws of their municipality, and there really is no accountability. But if you join our association, we hope that that accountability improves. So while I don't have a formal, robust certification program, I was in Toronto last week discussing what that might look like here in Saskatchewan through the Certified Rental Building Program. So in short, stay tuned, Councillor Stevens, because it's something we're concerned about as well to help regulate those bad apples and improve the industry overall, raise the bar higher for everybody.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Van Dort.
Thank you. Good afternoon. You mentioned membership. So how many landlords or so percentage of landlords that are members and that are not members?
Across the province or in Regina?
Let's just pick Regina.
So Regina is a bit harder to quantify, but I can tell you we represent about 700 members across the province, which is about 60% of the 85 to 90,000 rental housing units in Saskatchewan. I would say in terms of the percentage of our 700 members, approximately 30 to 35% of them would have property in Regina.
Okay. So Mayor Masters, the question to you then follow up is, what can you do as an association to impose some things, force someone to do something that they don't want?
Thank you for the question through Madam Chair to the councillor. Because we're a voluntary industry association, we have limited regulatory power if our members choose to withdraw their membership if they're being forced to, comply with a certain code of ethics or a certification program, because we are voluntary. We are not like the Saskatchewan Real Estate Commission, who in order to practice third-party property management, you need to be a registrant of the commission. So to be quite honest, councillor, we have limited power in terms of forcing, but we would hope, maybe I'm a naive young professional in saying that if we raise the bar overall, that hopefully the market would swallow up those bad apples through market consolidation and reward rental housing providers who are meeting the expectations of their tenants and of the city in which they're operating.
Okay, Mayor Masters, so benefit of being a member of the association, let's say a landlord that is a member or associate, what is the benefit? What do you do for that particular landlord?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, thank you for the question. A number of benefits come for our members. The biggest recent one is free member support. So we provide expert advice to our members on issues related to evictions or rental rates or anything in between as the subject matter experts for rental housing in Saskatchewan. They also benefit from representation at city halls across the province just like this, where we go and provide a landlord's perspective on policy issues. And they also have the ability to raise rent every 6 months versus 1 year when it comes to month tenancies. And that's included in the Saskatchewan Residential Tenancies Act, in addition to education, networking, and other common benefits that are often included in association memberships.
Okay, so the question, I think, Mayor, you made a comment, and I mean that's a normal comment. Say bad apple. What would you look at it? What would you consider a bad apple? Is there a chunk of it missing? There's some things that are in the middle of it, because we're dealing with the repeat offender, and your association works well on things. What would a bad apple be in your opinion?
We define, colloquially, bad apples or insufficient rental housing providers as those who aren't following our code of ethics, who aren't following or adhering to the Saskatchewan Residential Tenancies Act, and who are failing to comply with their respective municipal bylaws or policies.
Okay, one more and I'll let it be. Coming from Saskatoon, can't just let you go like that. So when you talk about housing, as we're looking at housing, affordable housing, all the different things, have you been working well with other jurisdictions, coming to table with council and municipalities to figure out of the shortage or figure out how to deal with that? Is that something that you've been doing or you are working on that?
Madam Chair, to the councillor, again, thank you for the question. I'm pleased, I wasn't going to name drop, but the Saskatchewan Housing Continuum Network yesterday released a report called the Saskatchewan State of our Current Housing Continuum that actually sets the stage for that question, councillor, and provides a shortage, an overall shortage of housing over the next 8 years if we assume that the province is going to grow to 1.4 million people, as stated in the Government of Saskatchewan's growth plan. So that's the first stage in opening up the conversation around housing shortage. I know the next natural question then is, well, what type of housing do we need in that mix, right? Affordable, social safety net, market rate, rental, single family. Are they duplexes? Are they fourplexes? That research is ongoing and will be published in the coming months and years around the housing mix. But we have a tremendous group of industry stakeholders in the province as well through the Mayor's Housing Summit a few months ago. So we're actively having those conversations around housing, and I can tell you that we're going to continue to do that.
Okay, and I lied, I promise, I'm not lying, but I'm gonna one more.
Councillor Fundera, I'm going to remind you, it's a report from the Police Commission on Clean Standards Act that the delegate is presenting on, so bring your questions back.
Okay. So then the question would be is that has the cities or the municipalities across the Saskatchewan come up to you for expert opinion or what you know on housing and all that?
We actively work with a number of administrations across the province. We have strong relationships across the province. I would say we have some work to do with the administration in Regina by virtue of me, our office being based in Saskatoon. But in terms of this administration, we likely work closest with the Regina Fire and Protective Services around life safety and things like that. But yes, we're an active contributor to housing policy across the province where we can and where our resources allow us to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice work, Councillor Fundera. I see no further questions. I'll thank you very much for attending this afternoon. Thanks for your patience and ask you please return to the gallery.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
We'll now consider item CR 22-63, follow-up to Board of Police Commissioners report. Deputy Mayor Zakidniak, can you please introduce the report?
Thank you. Yes, I can. So this report recommends some amendments to the Regina Community Standards bylaw as described in the report, and directs administration to bring forward quarterly update reports 1 year following the effective date of the amendments, and the implementation of a priority enforcement system to update executive committee on the effectiveness and additional options. So there was a lengthy discussion on this report, and as a result, recommendation number 2 was an amendment that came from the discussion at executive, and executive committee seeks concurrence with the recommendations in this report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can we get a seconder on the report? Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Any questions from members of council? All right, seeing none, Deputy Mayor, did you want to close off debate?
No, thanks.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call the vote.
This is Councillor Moule in favor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now consider CR 22-59, the Economic Development Regina Inc. appointment of directors. Deputy Mayor Zakidniak, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you. So this report seeks to reappoint and appoint some new appointments to the EDR Board of Directors. We received the recommendations from EDR, who has a committee to recommend appointments to the board. So we received this information at executive and had some conversation about who these appointments were and how they arrived at these recommendations. And executive committee does seek concurrence of the recommendations in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Kidniak. Can we have a seconder on the report? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Fundura. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, City Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Moule in favor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries unanimously with all members voting in favor.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to CR 22-60, the 2021 review of public outstanding items. Deputy Mayor Kidniak, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you. So this is a report that comes forward, I believe, annually in terms of deleting any outstanding items that need to be removed from council and the various committees. And so this is just a fairly straightforward recommendation to remove any outstanding items from the list of, or sorry, remove items that are no longer outstanding from that list. Executive committee seeks concurrence.
Thank you. Can we get a seconder on the report? Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Any members of council wish to speak to it? Seeing none. Councillor Kidniak, did you wish to close? Thank you. City Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Moule in favor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries unanimously with all members voting in favor.
Thank you very much to the clerks. We'll now consider item CR 22-61, the Adapted Recreation Plan Final Report. Deputy Mayor Kidniak, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you. The recommendation from this report is to endorse the Adapted Recreation Action Plan, which is included in Appendix A, and consider in the 2023 budget process an annual capital program beginning in 2023 of $500,000 for 5 years for implementing the results of the Rick Hansen Foundation accessibility certification audits that began in 2021 and will be continue to be conducted till 2023 with a priority on recreation facilities, and additionally to consider in the 2023 budget process an annual investment of $258,000 toward improving participation, communications, and engagement related to accessible recreation. This was something that has been developed as a result of the action plan noted in point 1. So this is, we're just continuing work on the initiative. This is something that we discussed at executive, and executive committee also seeks concurrence of this, and there was many comments made that this work is long overdue as well.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder on the report? Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Any member of council wish to speak? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. I have a couple questions. I see that we allocated $500,000 to improve the city facilities and bring them up to standards up to where they need to be. There was a discussion of only having $250,000. My question to administration, though, is if a complaint comes forward to the Human Rights Commission because of a building that's not up to code, where will that money come from? Because that will have to be done through the chair.
Who's got that one? Thank you. Ms. Shaley, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Masters, if complaints come through the Human Rights Commission, there is a process that we work through with them. And in terms of funding any requirements related to accessibility improvements, we would work with our colleagues in facilities to explore funding sources at that point in time.
What I'm just a bit concerned here because we're only allocating $500,000 for the next 3 years. And I guess I should ask this question first. With the 2021 assessment that we did, what was the result of that assessment? The compliance, how far out were we from being in compliance with the buildings that we did in 2021 through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So we're continuing to assess a number of buildings, but the ones that we have already finished our assessments on, there's sort of a whole range of results. So a lot of the priority areas are focused on washrooms and change rooms, and that's been a priority for administration over the past few years. We've been gradually improving accessibility of change rooms and washrooms, particularly at our major leisure centers and our outdoor pools. And so the work is ongoing. There's other recommendations that are really focused on improving access to buildings through power-operated doors, improving access in terms of the sidewalks and entrances to buildings. So there's really a wide range. We do have a lot of old buildings, and so we do have some fairly significant work at some of our buildings to improve accessibility. And as we're undertaking redevelopment projects or constructing new buildings, that's one of the key principles that guides our work. And so you would have seen some of those kinds of improvements recently when we upgraded the washrooms at the field house, the design of Wascana Pool and Maple Leaf Pool. So the standards in terms of facility design moving forward are quite significantly different than the past.
And I appreciate that moving forward. I mean, we expect the private industry to bring their buildings up to code, but yet the city, we fall behind. What I'd like to know though is when you talk about the assessments that have been done in 2021, we say, you know, there's got to be a number, there's a percentage, a number, there's got to be something. And I'd just like to know what that number is and what that percentage is in the buildings that we've so far conducted this work on, through the chair.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I'm going to ask Mr. Slater if he has access to any quantitative data related to the assessment.
Through you, Mayor Masters, that information is with P3A currently. So how we approach this process is we had Rick Hansen certified assessors come out to Regina, assess the facilities, and P3A is working with them on developing a report for us. That report will focus specifically on the gaps in our facilities and identify costs that are there. We know from initial assessments that there is substantial work that could be done in areas including parking, exterior accessibility, entrances into the facilities, including power-operated doors, washrooms, wayfinding, hearing, and short-term emergency systems. So there is, within our first 14 assessments, there's substantial work that can be done.
So what you're saying is we don't have that actual report back and the numbers back, but from what you see, so what I'm concerned about is the $500,000 that we're allocating per year to do these improvements. Is this really going to be enough? And considering what we know now, should this not be a budget line item through the chair?
Who in administration would like to take that? Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So, you know, it's clearly a recommendation here for us to come back as part of the 2023, 2024, having problems saying that today, budget process with respect to a budget focused on addressing these type of concerns. And when we come back, I think in the fall, I think we can bring that additional information on what we have to have a fulsome discussion around what's the appropriate budget line with respect to making progress on accessibility improvements to our facility infrastructure. I would say in the budget process, it's all about balancing priorities. And there are, finite funds and resources available to the city. And so I think that discussion should occur within that broader context, not in any way discounting the importance of this issue and the importance of us to make investments into improving accessibility to our facilities. But I think as well, there needs to be a balance with the amount of resources the city has and other priorities council has as well, and striking that balance with respect to with the funding we do have available, where should we prioritize it? And I think the budget conversation is the perfect place to have that conversation with council.
So if this comes back to us in the fall, though, we've already set the budget for the next.
No. It'll be in this budget presentation.
It's coming in this one coming forward?
So this would be coming forward in the fall with the budget to be approved in December for the fiscal years 2023 and 2024.
Okay, for the 2-year budget, so that'll be fine. So I go back to, what are we gonna do if this comes up with the human rights? I'm concerned, and I don't know if we have a plan. If a complaint comes in to human rights, through human rights, we have to do this. I'm just, is there a plan around that, based on that? Because we brought this up so much that maybe, is there something that's been talked about with the chair?
Mr. Nicol.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Masters. The process through the Human Rights Commission can be a long, very detailed process. That doesn't make it right or wrong. The fact is it can be very lengthy. And I think we realize that we have to, as Mr. Lacey said, we have to put this down on a list of other priorities that council has addressed and wanted us to do, and then respectfully, council will make the determination on the final prioritization of those with the budget in the fall. Part of the working with the Human Rights Commission is that if you can show them real legitimate progress in some of the areas that you're working on, in my experience, they tend to say, okay, keep going. We're not going to sanction you. We see that you're trying to address this. That's been my experience with them. So I think it would be fair that if we said, look, we have a serious situation in our own facilities. It did not materialize overnight. We're not going to fix it overnight. But they may well say to us respectfully, yeah, 500,000 dedicated each year for the next 5 years, pending this, and and working in sync with the report that P3 Architecture has. I think that would be the appropriate way to handle this, but that in no way precludes anybody from going to the Human Rights Commission and making a complaint. I mean, I can't guarantee the process that they would follow, but again, my experience is that if you can show them that we are dealing in good faith and we're actively looking at it, we're not saying, well, we'll look at it in 3 years. That can go a long way to resolving it, keeping in mind we still have a long ways to go.
And I thank you for that answer, but I do know, because I've gone through human rights and I do know how that's handled. And it's a tough one, and I'm sure what'll happen is just something will get more prioritized. If the complaint comes at the Lawson Center, then we're gonna have to prioritize that. I'm happy with the success of this motion. I'm happy that we've brought this to awareness to administration, to the public. I do want to just speak briefly about the paratransit. Now, when we were talking about the master transit plan,
Sorry, Councillor Shaw, the item before us is on the adapted recreation plan. Is the paratransit tied into programming?
Yeah.
Excellent. Keep going.
So just what I wanted to touch base on here is the question was asked, 5.1% of our population uses transit in Regina. 3.3% of that population is paratransit users. Have we put enough money into the paratransit to bring it up to what we needed to supply rides and accessibility for the paratransit users with the adaptive sports through the chair?
Through the chair, so The addition of the 6,000 hours, I believe is a step in the right direction. Our refusal rate is quite low when we compare to other municipalities across Canada. So I think for now, as we work through the Transit Master Plan, which has plans for paratransit in there, things like some of the technology in paratransit that will be changed out that will help with that and become more user-friendly for customers that require paratransit. I think all of that work will continue to increase ridership. We also, through our program, Train the Trainer program that we have, Dylan Morin is one of the educators on that. That moves people who require, either a low floor bus that may be able to transfer over from paratransit. That frees up space on paratransit for those customers that cannot make that move over to our regular conventional system. So I think we're headed in the right direction.
Thank you for that, and I believe that we're in the right direction. Now we'll see how this goes and go from there. But thank you for the answering of those questions. That's all I have, Mayor Masters.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you. So just in regards to, I want to first of all say thank you to the staff. A lot of work went into it, but also the engagement of the many, many organizations, also to parents with children with disability, to the general public. It really was, what I had heard was that they can't remember the last time engagement was done with holistically in the community. So they were very, very grateful for that. I guess one of the things, the takeaways was, what did we learn out of doing this? And the reason I say that is because we haven't engaged them for so long, and we know we had programs, but we had to do more. One of the things that I read that really stuck with me was in this report that did come back from the survey, which is on page 6, it indicated here that it is also vital to understand that many participants are wary of engaging in city programs, some choosing to actively not attend because of previous negative experiences where a minimal level of accountability or access occurred. So what did we learn, and what are we going to do better moving forward with this? Through the chair.
Ms. Shaley?
Through you, Mayor Masters. So we learned a lot in terms of areas we need to focus on, which of course is outlined in the plan that's in front of you, from a wider variety of classes, programs we need to offer, to the one-on-one support that's required. We know that every individual that comes into our center will have unique needs that we need to be able to respond to improved communications, better training of our frontline staff. As Councillor Shaw has discussed, the need to improve the accessibility of our facilities. But the other thing that I think we've done that we'll be able to take forward is we have established some more meaningful engagement processes in terms of involving people with lived experience to help us engage the community. Right now, we have a sector reference group that is comprised of individuals experiencing a disability as well as caregivers. And that's a group that we intend to continue to consult as we implement this plan, so that we can continue to learn throughout the process.
Thank you. Just one last question in regards to the some of the feedback that was on in there, and it was, one of the concerns was the lineup at Maple Leaf Pool. Okay, so we know that it takes people more time. They need that extra, maybe crowds, all that kind of thing. Have we considered, that maybe people with disability can get in an hour earlier, just like, Costco and other places do for seniors and people with needs, that you can go in a little bit earlier to, before it opens, maybe it's an hour earlier, to make sure that you're not in the rush. Is that something that the city has ever considered, through the chair?
Ms. Shaley?
Through you, Mayor Masters, that is an issue that we're discussing right now in terms of how best to resolve it. So I don't know specifically how we're going to provide better access at Maple Leaf Pool. I also want to share, though, that as we build more accessible facilities, Wascana Pool is an example, I think will help to alleviate some of those concerns. A person experiencing a disability will have more spaces, more public facilities to visit. And Wascana Pool is going to be another facility that really is designed with accessibility in mind. And so I think as we add these spaces to our inventory, we'll alleviate some of those pressures on the fewer facilities that we have that are accessible.
Okay, that's great. Again, I just want to say thank you to the staff. Incredible work here, well done. And I think we're moving into a model where we're truly looking at the individual and the needs. And that's, rather than program focused, we're looking at, I would say, more customer focused. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bresciani. I see no further questions from council. Councillor Zakidniak, did you want to close off debate?
No, thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call the vote.
Through you, Mayor Masters, the motion carries 10-0 with all 10 members voting in favor. Councillor Moll has left the meeting.
Thank you to the clerks. We'll consider item CR 22-62, the Municipal Justice Building Community Center naming. Deputy Mayor Zakidniak, can you please introduce the report?
Thank you. This report recommends that the administration, that City Council direct administration to establish a name using a community advisory group for the neighborhood center that will be located within the Municipal Justice Building. The city does not currently have a standard process for naming civic buildings, and so this recommendation is in alignment with recent past practice used when naming Mamawe-Atatin and the principles underpinning the Civic Naming Committee guideline. Executive Committee seeks concurrence.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder on the report, please? Thank you, Councillor Stadnicek. Any questions comments from council? Seeing none, clerks, please call the vote.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries 10-0 with all members voting in favor.
Thank you to the clerks. We'll now consider the following bylaws: the Regina Traffic Amendment Bylaw and the Waste Management Amendment Bylaw. I'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor Zakidniak to do the first reading of the bylaws.
I move, seconded by Councillor Hawkins, that bylaws 2022-31 and 2022-32 be introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Clerk, could you call the vote, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the first reading of the bylaws carries unanimously.
Thank you to the clerks. Deputy Mayor Zakidniak, can you please do the second reading of the bylaw?
I move, seconded by Councillor Stevens, that bylaws 2022-31 and 2022-32 be read a second time.
Thank you. Do you have any members of council have any questions? Seeing none, clerk, could you please start the vote?
Through you, Madam Mayor, second reading carries unanimously with all members voting in favor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Zakiniak, can you please do consent for third reading?
I move, seconded by Councillor Brachiani, the council hereby consent to bylaws 2022-31 and 2022-32 going to third reading at this meeting.
Thank you. Clerks, could you please call the vote?
Through you, Madam Mayor, consent for third reading carries unanimously as required by law.
Perfect. Deputy Mayor Zakiniak, could you please do the final reading of the bylaw?
I move, seconded by Councillor Findura, that bylaws 2022-31 and 2022-32 be read a third time.
Thank you. Clerks, could you please call the vote?
Through you, Madam Mayor, third and final reading carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Hawkins, a seconder. Councillor Stevens. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Going once, going twice, just kidding. Carried. Have a good night, guys.